All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're in session at this time, May 24th budget meeting. Clerk, please call the roll.
All right, this is the FY17 budget proceedings. We have Council Capone.
Here.
We have Council Del Shula.
Here.
We have Council DeFlorio.
Here.
We have Council DePiero.
Here.
We have Council Healy.
Here.
We have Council McKinnon.
Here.
We have Council McLaughlin. We have Council McKinnon.
Here.
And we have Council Napolitano.
Here.
We have 9 members present. We do have a quorum.
9 members present. Please, members, cease, stand and salute the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag. All right, since nobody has any recommendations and no one has any questions, I make a motion to adjourn. No, I'm just kidding.
That was easy.
Council DeFlorio, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, before we start this meeting, I would like to clarify something. I have some folks that are confused out there, okay? And I want the auditor to come up and explain how not how much the tax rate is going to be, how we come up with the tax rate. The tax rate comes up based on our budget. A lot of people saying, the houses are going up, the house is going up, my house was worth 300, now it's worth 600, and what am I gonna be paying double in taxes? I want the auditor to explain that that's not the case, because when the value goes up, the tax rate comes down. I'm not looking for the auditor to give us a rate. I understand that that's not set until September. But based on this budget, the auditor can give us an idea,
Just an overview.
of more or less, to appease the people that they're getting very scared. So if you would indulge me to bring the auditor up, I would like to ask that question.
Okay. Council Hillman, you had a question?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we've talked about this before, and I just want to, this is what we're up against, okay? This meeting has been advertised, and our agendas are usually advertised. And what we're allowed to talk about is what's on that agenda or what's scheduled for this meeting. The subject matter that my colleague is talking about is not on this. That is a violation of the open meeting laws because of the fact that the public out there does not know that this event or this question is going to be asked tonight. It's a violation of open meeting laws. And I'm interested in that subject just as well as anybody is. And I would suggest that the best thing we could do is to invite the gentleman up on a regular council night, put that on our calendar, and we can talk to him about it until the sun comes up. But tonight, I think it's a violation of the open meeting laws.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I have to
Counsel
disagree
DeFlorio.
with that. This is a budget hearing. I believe that we can ask any questions, even though this has been advertised, we can go back and ask any question we want, okay? It's a budget hearing, it is a budget question, and it is based on the budget. So I'm not gonna sit here and argue. I believe it's not I believe it's not. I'm sorry, we'll get the city solicitor and we'll ask her the questions. I'm not bringing this budget matter in front of a city council meeting.
Okay. Council Capone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would agree with Councilor DeFlorio. I think especially in light of the fact that there's concern for the folks at home, there's a lot of confusion. So I would say, as the auditor is before us, maybe just a general overview of the process without getting into specific questions, just so that the folks at home have a better understanding of what's happening here, what happens in the budget process, and how your taxes go. I don't think that we go too far astray with that, but that's just my opinion.
Anybody else want to weigh in? All right, seeing none, I will allow it. Just be Counselor.
I'd like to go into a vote.
What's that?
I'd like to be a vote.
Yeah, I'd like to have a roll call vote.
Okay. Mr. Clerk, roll call vote on, in terms of voting, bringing up the auditor before the regular budget meeting to ask questions. Please, call the roll.
All right, Council Capone.
Yes.
Council Del Shula.
No.
Council DeFlorio.
Yes.
Council DePiero.
No.
Council
No?
Council Mangan.
Yes.
Councilor McLaughlin.
No.
Council McKinnon.
Yes.
And Council Napolitano.
No.
We have 4 in the affirmative. We got 5 in the negative.
5 in the negative, the order fails at this time. So we will start off with having Mr. D'Angelo as well as Mr. Demus, if you could join us for this, starting on pages 13 and 14 of your budget books. Mr. D'Angelo, before we get started, do you have any money that's being returned?
No.
Okay.
No money to return, unfortunately.
Thank you very much. All right, members, Councilor Capone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, gentlemen. On page 13, the line that says other charges, it's going up significantly from last year. Could you just give us some examples of what kind of items we're looking at?
Basically, I charge 3 items to that. I have lockbox fees for Century Bank. I have the parking stickers, and I have the credit card fees. When people charge their credit card, use their credit cards to pay, the city's picking up their fees. That was to encourage them to use the credit cards. Well, that's exploded, so a lot of people using the credit cards, as opposed to the first year when hardly anybody used them. So since that's exploded so much, we had to bump up the budget.
Yeah, I would think that one issue right there is, what is it, like 3%?
Yes, we're about 2-3%. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I guess at some point we probably should look into doing something with the parking rate with a credit card, because clearly we can't afford to keep absorbing that, but,
I think it was set up to encourage people to start using it. Then it was gonna be looked at
Okay.
further down the road. If it got to be out of hand and it was starting to cost the city $200,000-$300,000, then it was gonna be looked at again.
okay. And with regards to the breakout, how much are the lockbox fees, rough ballpark? How much of this line item?
Sometimes around 10,000 or so.
Okay. And then the
Roughly.
parking stickers, you would think would be?
It's in the 30s, low 30s.
Okay, and then the balance of the credit cards?
Balances the credit cards, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilor DeFlorio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for you. In regards to the credit cards, if people use a credit card, can you charge more? I know in Boston they do that. I paid a bill online to
Yeah.
somebody, and they asked me to do it for them because they didn't know how to do it, and they charge extra money. They charge like an extra $2 fee.
Well, that's what some of the cities and towns do. They have the taxpayer pick up the fee of using the credit card. When Mr. Viskey was here, he decided to get people interested in using it. If we were charging them, it was costing $50 or $60 to charge their tax bill, they weren't gonna do it.
Well, no, I'm not saying to charge them $50 or $60, but if I'm paying my tax bill online, it's only a $2 fee, but you're collecting a $2 fee for the $30 ticket, and a $2 fee for the $10 ticket.
No, we're not making anything. This is the credit card company that's charging them the fee.
No, I understand that, but the credit card company charges you, what's the percentage? 1.5, 2, I don't know.
Like 2-3%. It depends
So
on
if
the
it's-
size of the bill.
Okay, so 2%. So if somebody pays online, a $25 ticket, it's only costing you 40 cents.
Yeah, there's a
But
minimum,
you're charging
yeah.
them $2, so you're making $1.60 on that to cover the $3,000 tax bill.
Right now, we don't charge them anything. That's.
Right, but that's, maybe we should consider something like that in the future, look into it. Every other
Something's-
city in town does it.
Something to think about, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Councilor Napolitano.
Now, are they able to use debit cards?
Yes.
Okay, because I know the debit cards, the rate, the interest ratio is much different. You pay a flat fee instead of a percentage of.
Yeah, they can have the money directly taken out of their savings account or checking account, which is much less. It's like a 50-cent flat fee, and that's a lot easier. But if you use a credit card, then it goes up a lot.
What a lot of businesses will do, that they encourage people to use a debit card to make those payments, so that way they know that they're getting less taken out. Okay, so, I just want to make sure that that was an option.
Yes, it's an option, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else out there? Go to page 14. Councilor Capone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. I see on the clerk lines, is it 1, 2, 3rd and 4th, it's going down a little bit.
Okay.
Could you explain that?
Oh, the two clerks on the
Yeah,
line,
going
those are
from
open
40 to
posi-
35.
Those are open positions. People have retired.
Okay, so it's a entry level.
Yes. entry level.
Okay,
Step
thank
one,
you.
yep.
Any other questions? Councilor
Did we, Mr. Chairman, through you, either one of, did we get anything on the questions that we asked? Is that, you didn't give us that?
Yeah, I won't be returning anything, I'm sorry.
No, the questions were how much funds were gonna be returned, what your expenses were to date. Did you receive any 2016 grants?
No grants, no.
Okay.
Uh,
They all got the same questions, though. I won't ask for that. Okay.
Yeah, no money being returned. We've spent about 85% of our budget to date, so I don't expect to return anything. If we have anything, it's gonna be very small.
Thank you.
Anything else on page 14? Seeing none? 81.
We have, say, 81.
Councilman McLaughlin.
Just for clarification, so D'Angelo, under October 15, 2009 Kavarian, we asked for $1,015,000, and we, up to date, has expended zero.
Yes, that's because that debt doesn't come due until this June.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Council Hammond.
On the account descriptions, these are debts that the city is owed, we're paying off.
Yes.
Could you, and I'm not gonna ask you to do it for me now, but could you provide us a list of those things that are gonna be paid off in the near future?
I can get you a debt book if you want for the council to have, yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions on page 81? Seeing none? Page 82, please. Councilman McLaughlin.
Most of the debt says what it is, public works facility, whatever the line item might be. What are the dates, Mr. D'Angelo?
The dates, this is the way they wanted to put on it last year. The assistant city auditor at that time thought it would be easier to match up the debt if we put the dates in there and when we borrowed it, to match it up. So that's basically the date we borrowed the money.
So like, for example, December 20th, 2012, public works facility.
That's
And
what-
then further down, it shows December 20th, 2013.
Yes.
Oh, okay, I get it, yeah, thank you.
That was a capital borrowing, last three capital borrowings that we've done.
Any other? Councilman Napolitano.
Okay, third line down, April 23rd, 2015.
Yes.
429,957. What exactly is that?
That was probably, if I had to get, that was a refinance.
Refinance
Refunding,
of
yeah.
overall debt, or?
Of a debt, of an earlier debt on one of the schools, I believe. We were able to get a better rate. Yeah.
Okay. And as a result, the interest is higher? If I'm reading this right?
Sometimes they give you the savings up front. I believe that's what we asked for. We wanted to get the savings in the early years, and we paid more, a little more in the later years.
I see. All right, thank you.
Any other questions on page 82? Seeing none, 83, please. Council Capone.
I apologize. Could I ask something back on 82? One quick question.
82?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The very last line, the February 16, 2016,
Yes.
the interest on the 660, what is that attached to? What borrowing purposes, do you know?
That's the last capital thing that we just borrowed back in February. That was last year's capital plan.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Any questions on 83?
On 83, Mr. Chairman?
Council Hammond.
this says interest on temporary loans.
Yes,
How many loans are there?
there's none.
No loans?
That's
This is-
that's in case we need to borrow.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, on to page 87, please. Any questions on page 87? For, so thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any recommendations at this time?
Go right to the next.
Any recommendations?
Mr. Chairman, now you said that we could make cuts at the end.
Yes, just thank you for reminding me there. What they're gonna do is that there were Council Capone, Matusky, and Della Sola, and DePiero were not here the other day. So, at the end, at the very last hearing that we have, if there's anybody that you want there, for any reason, whether it's to ask one other question, or, to make a recommendation, certainly we want to do it with the person being in the audience.
And
Just please-
when is the end meeting?
Recommendation, that's gonna be right.
No, they could do it at the end, too.
They could do it at the
Yeah,
end, but
that's
they'd
what I mean.
also right out.
Yes, they can do it right now. Okay,
No,
when
I'm
is the last meeting?
Is it second?
Yes.
June 2nd is the last meeting.
So June 2nd is the last meeting, that's, we don't have a council meeting before then.
No.
No.
Okay, so my question can't be answered. What the auditor needs to tell me is gonna determine what I'm gonna do with this budget,
Okay.
okay? Because that's the fair way of doing things. We're not gonna sit here just to cut. We're here for the taxpayers. If this is a good budget, I think the administration has done a great job. We have a lot of growth coming, and I agree with it. But the people want to understand what we have to raise based on this budget. What is the amount we have to raise? And that's a legitimate question to ask.
No, I agree, Counsel.
Okay.
So what I would
So my
recommend,
point is, if, we're either gonna call for a special meeting, because I can't make a recommendation on cuts until I know that answer.
right, what I would ask then, Counsel, is then before, we have the right before every meeting to, again, ask the person, the gentleman, Mr. Demus, the auditor to come in front of us. What I would do then is, before our next budget meeting, we have the right to do it again, ask, and we can take a roll call vote for the beginning of the next meeting, if you want, and to ask, to allow the board, but I can't make any extra stipulations, but we did take a vote before the next meeting. Like I said, I would, you can certainly have that right to take it to a vote again, to have Mr. Deems come in front of us before the actual meeting and to give that information. Unless there's another possibility, is to possibly maybe get something in writing from him before the next meeting on paper that shows, or like a statement or something from Mr. Demas saying that they can hand out to all of us, that basically answers those questions. If that's the case, then, like I said,
The question isn't for me, Mr. Chairman.
no, I understand that.
I've been here 11 years, I
No,
understand
I
it.
understand that, but I'm just saying
It's
is
for
that.
the viewing audience asking the question.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying is, what I'm saying is, I don't know if the vote's gonna go your way again, or not. So what I'm saying is that at least, if we have information on hand from Mr. Demas that the questions you're looking for, I understand the viewing public, isn't it? Then at least you have that in your hand, that you can at least say that, that, tell, people that are calling you, or the constituents that are calling you, to say that, or you could bring it up at the next council meeting and stuff like that, but
It would be too late at the next council meeting, so we'd have to call for a special meeting. I'll do that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Counselor Hanlon.
next council meeting is the 13th of June. And that's when we're presenting this budget to the public. That's when the public meeting comes. And we can amend the budget at that meeting also.
Correct.
So if we have, want to make a cut and you forget one, or you have one that you made and you want to change your mind on it, you can also do it on the 13th. That's the time that you can add a cut to the budget.
Thank you for adding that, Counsel.
Okay.
All right. The next one we have is Ms. Abraham from the libraries, and it's going to be pages 75 and 76. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Abraham. Counselor Capone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to disclose that I don't think it's a conflict, but my wife is on the Board of Trustees for the library and also a friend of the library, so I just want to disclose that. It's a non-paid position, but.
Thank you for doing that, I appreciate it. Any questions on page 75?
Mr. Chairman?
Counselor Hanlon.
As usually, it was usual, on account number 5510, books, magazines, and newspapers, that's for $20,000. Do we get a portion of that back? That we should get a portion of that back, didn't we, from the state?
Oh, we do get state aid to public libraries.
Because is
It's
this
for-
part of that figure there?
No.
No. I thought if we spent a certain amount of money on our budget, the state would give us X amount of dollars.
That's true. State aid is dependent on a number of things, one of which is that the community provide an amount every year that is 2.5% increase over the average of the past 3 years of appropriation. That qualifies us for state aid,
I know it was
with a
something-
couple of other requirements, but that's one of the big ones.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Abrams, part-time line item. Did we add a part-time position in one of the two libraries?
You know, our part-time hours vary greatly, so we don't have a certain number of positions in each one at the same hours, because we have a great deal of variation over the year and according to our needs. So,
But there's a
Yeah.
increase from
Yeah.
about $39,000 from last year to this year, so is that
Correct.
a additional person that's gonna be working in the library?
it would fund additional hours and probably additional people, as our part-timers work a maximum of 19 hours a week. So you come up to that
Okay.
barrier. So you need to hire additional people occasionally. We do have a minimum wage issue that we've had to accommodate this past year and next year.
Okay, no,
So that's part of it.
I
We have to
appreciate
bring everybody up to at least that minimum.
And the other question I have is under equipment repair and maintenance. Again, comparing last year's budget to
Mhm.
this year's budget. Last year, we appropriated $24,000. This year, we're appropriated
The
4,000.
The reason for the difference was we had a big project last year to replace some of our public use computers, and that's not quite done, but it's in progress, and we will not need that again next year.
Well, right, and that's why I'm asking, do we need some additional money to finish the project with the computers, or is this
I think we'll
4,000?
finish, I think we'll finish it with the,
What the $4,000 will cover?
yes.
Because when I was at the library recently at a celebration that Councilor Capone had invited me to, I had spoken to some people regarding that, so that's why I asked if it would be enough to finish that on the existing
The
project.
funding that will finish it will be during this fiscal year,
Okay.
so.
Thank you.
Counselor Napolitano.
Thank you, through the chair. Equipment and other, there was
Yes.
no funding for that in prior years, now it's $11,709.
Right.
What is that for?
We requested 2 items for the capital improvement budget, but it was considered that the amount was more appropriate to this budget. And it's for 2 things. One is the chairs in the children's department are all cracking, the cushions are all cracking, and they're now 20-some years old, and they've had good use over those 20 years, so it's time to replace them. Same with our meeting room tables. They're just falling apart with all the use they're getting. So we'd like to replace both of those things. And we've used our experience with renovating the Shute Library so that we know what the good stuff is, and would like to use that experience to inform our purchasing for the Parlin Library.
All right, thank you.
Counselor McKinnon.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is allocating for both Shute and Poundland Library.
The top is the Chute and the bottom is Parlin.
Okay.
The personnel is for both,
For both?
yes.
Okay. And was there any new positions that were coming in?
No,
No new positions?
no.
You have enough staffing for both?
Do we have no?
You have enough staffing for both Shute and Poundland?
Yes, once everything's filled. We do have one vacant position, which is why we're returning some money to the city. And when that's filled, then we'll be in pretty good shape. We always can, we have over the years lost a couple of positions. And one of them was the assistant director position is no longer in our budget, was lost in 2008. And I've asked for consideration to be returned. I think it would make the library a more vibrant and progressive library, and I hope someday that'll happen. But it didn't happen this year.
There's always next year.
There's always next year.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor McLaughlin.
Stevens. Just clarification, not really a question, but non-print media. It looks like we're spending around $58,000 between the two libraries, if I'm reading this correctly. 42,000 at the Harlan and 16,500 at the Shute Library. Well, what is just new
It could be
material?
AV equipment, but it's also databases. And that's why the number is a lot bigger for the Parlin, because all the bills for the databases that everyone uses at both libraries and from home over their computer are charged to that account. So anything that isn't print, we spend at least $10,000 a year on various databases.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? 76, any questions?
Maybe I should add one more thing. Ebooks is the other one.
Counselor Della Sola.
The clerk, is this a new position?
Where are we? Okay, yes, I see.
Clerk one?
No, that's a person that's been there for some time. It was listed in past, she's been part-time, now she's considered full-time.
Since 16 and 0 and get 34,000.
Pardon me? Is that-
76.
Right here.
In 2016.
Yeah, because in the past, her salary had been included in the part-time.
Any other? Counselor McLaughlin.
So again, not to rehash what Council Delasola just said. Say that one more time, what you just said. It was in the.
In the past, her position was in the part-time category.
And now it's gonna go to a full-time position. Where does that show
To
that?
be working 35 hours a week, yes.
And where do we see the reflection of a additional full-time staff member from a part-time staff member? Because it looks like each line item is transferable from last year. So I'm not sure where I'm seeing a part-time person going to a full-time person.
Well, they weren't listed separately last year because they were part-time. They were working part-time.
So
They were
again,
considered
what-
part-time last
What
year.
line item here is this individual?
This,
It's the third from the bottom. If you see
bottom, okay.
underneath the FY16 appropriation, the one line that has a 0.
Okay. It now has a
Yeah.
1.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Abrams just told us that that was a full-time position last year. Part-time position,
Yeah.
I apologize. Part-time position last year that has now gone to a full-time position. But it doesn't reflect that in my book unless I'm missing it, Mr. Demus, and I can ask Mrs. Hurley to come up and, if she has an answer for me on that, but, I'm just trying to get clarification because there's still a gap in my mind, on the salaries, that would reflect something like that change happening. I'm just trying to see where it was.
Well, I think if you look underneath the position column and you see the third from the bottom clerk,
Can I ask Mrs. Early to come up as well, please? Do you mind?
We count FTE, full-time employees. So
Okay.
you'll see the zero because she was working various hours. She wasn't working a straight full-time position. But she recently has been working full-time, and that's why she's going from 0 to 1. And we would include her in the full-time, the head count, full-time employee head count.
Okay, and again, I don't think that anybody's trying to do anything. I'm just trying to clarify, just to understand it
Sure.
myself, just so that when we go along in this book, other places, I understand what exactly I'm looking at. I apologize that I'm new to
Right.
the process, so I apologize. But
You'll see some of those, like if you look under boards and commissions, you see a lot of zeros.
Okay.
But we know there are people working there.
Sure.
But they're not included in that head count, so they show zeros.
Mrs. Early. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Any other questions, 75 or 76? See- Thank you for appearing, Abraham. Any recommendations at this time? Seeing none?
Thank
We'll move on to Fire Department, invite Chief David Butler up. Chief, thank you for joining us.
Good evening.
Chief, just a question, any amount that's going to be returned, anything at all, do you know?
Yes, I have to apologize. I made up a nice spreadsheet for you and made copies, and believe it or not, I made a mistake. I left the column off with the amount I was returning from each line item. So I'll email that up to you, but I can tell you the amount totals about $325,000
Okay,
that I'm going to be returning, and the bulk of that is in salaries, almost all of it.
okay, thank you.
And there's a reason for that I can
And we're going to
explain.
be starting off on page 40 in our budget books, and Council DePiero first, and then Council McLaughlin after.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, quick question on the defibrillator stipends line item. It's a very minimal number expended in FY16. Is that because the bill comes in at a later date?
Exactly. That stipend is paid the last payday in June. The reason that some of it's been paid out is for people that retired during the year, but that'll be brought down to zero come the last payday in June.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor McLaughlin.
I'm gonna ask on overtime, Chief. Shows in 2016's budget, we appropriate $350,000.
Correct.
Expended to date, $663,000. And we're only asking for $612. First of all, can we just expend as need be on overtime because it's public safety, or where did we get the additional money? If we appropriate $350 and we spent $663, we doubled the overtime.
We expended what we expended because of vacancies in the department over the year. We had some long-term vacancies that hadn't been filled, and I'm able to offset some of that overtime with what I saved in salaries.
And I ask only because you just told us that you had spent, gave back $325,000.
That's after I covered the deficit in overtime.
Which is pretty incredible. And my only other question is, if we're spent that much this year, $663 to date, and we still have a few months left, why would we be only asking for the $612 if we are spending that this year? Are we not going to spend, or are you anticipating the same method next year of a vacancy being able to do it in-house lateral transfer?
I'm anticipating we're gonna spend less money next year on overtime because we're hiring 8 more firefighters under a grant. So we're gonna be increasing our personnel.
And again, I applaud you for that, absolutely. But
Thank you.
we have by far the biggest development in history of the city of Everett, and we're going to need other resources shifted from our fire department over to that development, whether it's inspectors or it's other personnel that's going to be needed on that site. So you still feel comfortable that this will cover?
Yep,
that?
we recognized that early on, and I had discussions with the mayor about this from back at the beginning of time on the wind project, and we were able to secure this grant, and the mayor, was
Sure. Yeah, no, and again,
was
I
willing
applaud-
to accept the grant, so.
I
we're-
applaud your efforts, and I'm sorry to see you leaving us this year.
Council Counsel McKinnon.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the chief. Chief, just the explanation why so much money's coming back?
So much is coming back.
Yeah.
The big reason
Sure.
is, I was actually able to, we had a lot of money left in, our SAFER grant expired in, the performance period was over last May. And I had over budgeted a little bit when I put the grant application in. So I actually had enough money left. I was able to extend the grant for 1 year on one of the 8 firefighters who was a veteran.
They
So they-
extend for the veteran?
They gave me an extra year on the veteran
We
and
still have it on these grants coming? up?
increased the amount of money that I had for that veteran. And because I had over budgeted, I had a lot of money left at the end of the performance period.
Sure.
So I applied to the government to allow me to change my grant period until this April. And I actually had enough money left over to carry most of those firefighters for almost 8 months.
Oh, that's great.
So 8 months of salary actually got charged to the grant. So we saved a lot of money.
That was great. The other thing I have a question, so this grant that's hiring these 8 right here, did we utilize 1 for, or 2 for the vets that are in there as well, or
I can't remember how many veterans were on the list.
2?
Yeah,
So
they,
how
they
many?
haven't extended the time period on this grant. They may.
Okay.
They must have had, I'm guessing they had some money left in the grant program, so they did extend it for any veterans that we had
How many
hired.
years is it? 2 years they
It's a
paid?
2-year grant
Okay.
for
And
the
they pay for them
veteran.
too?
And the last grant for the veteran, that grant period just ended a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And they extended it for 1 year for the veteran that I had.
So, okay, so the one that's coming in, they'll extend it out for that one, that's all.
We don't know.
Okay,
Hopefully.
all right.
All set,
And-
Counsel?
No. Let me see here. So we're hiring 8 on that, the grant that we got, what's that, the SAFER grant?
Correct.
Okay. And that came in from federal or state?
That's from FEMA, Homeland Security.
Federal, okay. And then we hired, an additional 4?
Those are replacements for people that have retired.
And how many more are you anticipating retiring besides yourself?
I can only guarantee you one.
It's been
I'm
a great
antici-
ride, Chief.
Say what?
Been a great ride.
Thank you. Yeah, it has been a great ride. I have no regrets.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is my 15th budget hearing. I
Wow.
look forward to this every year.
Sure you do.
Yeah, it's a great event.
It's hard to say. I'm guessing that we could have 6 to 8, even maybe more retired. There's gonna be a big turnover in the next few years.
Are we looking to replace those?
We've been replacing right along. There's been,
Through
yeah,
attrition?
I mean, people have been replaced right along, and I believe the mayor's intention is to keep staffing, where it is. Yep.
Yeah, okay. All right, I'll yield. Thank you.
Okay, Counsel McLaughlin, your question, is it on this page or another page?
Sort of just a journalist question. I can ask it at the end to the chief. Is okay with me.
Yeah, we're gonna move on to page 41.
Question.
Oh, did you, I'm sorry. I did have you down, I apologize. Counsel Delasola.
That's okay, thank you. Chief, I got 2 questions. Certifications, is that so many years, everybody gets certified, it shows in 16 it was 0, now it's 120?
It's actually a new item in the collective bargaining agreement, where we pay the firefighters for certain certifications that they receive. There's a myriad of certifications they can get for Fire Officer 1, Fire Officer 2, Fire Instructor. They're all certifications they receive through the Massachusetts Fire Training Council. And they have a new contract language that pays them so much for
Every qualification?
for
every-
these certifications and also for college degrees. And that's what that line item is. It's a new line item in the budget. Just came about last year.
Okay, the other question was on the training,
Mm-hmm.
is that gonna be enough? Is this for the academy?
No,
Not
this
a
is,
whip.
this is for our in-house training. We don't pay for the fire academy. The fire academy is at no cost to the city.
Okay,
We
I
pay,
just-
we have to pay their salary while they're there, but There's no cost to send them to the fire academy.
Okay, I was just wondering, because we're hiring 8, right, correct?
Correct, 12, actually.
12, okay.
This is for in-house training,
Okay,
which this line item was actually increased last year.
all right, thank you.
Okay, move on to page 41, Council DePiero.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, just because it's a new capital expenditure, can you explain to us what turnout gear is?
Turnout gear is the personal protective equipment that they wear, the coat and the pants.
Okay.
It's their fire code, fire pants, so we issue 2 sets to every firefighter. We have to issue 2. They can't use them if they're wet. So if they have a fire, they have to go to their dry set. And the life expectancy is about 6 years. So we started a program last year. We went on a regular replacement program where we try to do around 20% of the turnout gear each year, so that we're not getting hit with that big whack
It's very
every
smart.
6 years, so.
Thank you.
Council Napolitano.
Thank you. I think you may have actually answered part of my question here, but yeah, it's regarding the turnout gear. Didn't we have the $65,000 for this, isn't this what was on last year's capital
Yep.
improvement?
Yep.
So because we approved it last year, it ends up on this year's budget?
No, it's a year-to-year. The plan is to put this in the line item in every year, so that we can continuously be replacing the gear on a 5-year cycle.
And you said, what, 20%?
The reason that it was higher one year, because we had a bunch of new recruits coming on, so I think the amount this year was 65. Last year it was 100,000.
Okay.
I
And we
believe.
haven't seen, this is actually for the auditor, we haven't seen the capital improvement budget before us as a whole yet. Is there an item, and I haven't gotten a copy, is there an item on there for turnout gear this year?
There is, and in the FY17 CIP, it's to be funded out of the operational budget, which is why it's automatically on this page right here.
Okay, thank you.
All set, Council?
Yes.
Move on to page, actually, no, 42. Council McLaughlin?
Yes. Chief, this year we've added 9 new positions in the fire department. Is that correct?
We're actually adding 8. I think the reason that it's showing 9 is because of that veteran that wasn't carried in our budget last year, but he is being carried in our budget this year. The actual increase in personnel that we're budgeting for is 8.
Is 8.
And, I mean, we're only budgeting part. There's a couple of things that the government doesn't pay for. So we have to include them in our budget for clothing allowance and things like that. But no, the actual increase is 8.
Any other questions? Councilors on this page?
Mr. Chairman, could I go
Council
back to
Hanlon.
page 40?
Yes, absolutely. Back to page 40, please.
Chief, on the certification 5194 account, that's $120,000. Is that a one-time?
No, it's every year.
I mean, is it, I know it's every year, but is it, once a person gets a certification, let's say they get $100, does that go in their paycheck from now forever on?
Yes.
So if
Yes.
this $120,000 is forever gonna be in the budget, next year will be a new $120,000.
Yeah, it could be less depending if people leave that have,
Okay.
certifications.
But this-
This
once they get it,
this
goes in.
number's based on what we're actually spending. We actually spent this year, I think, somewhere in the $95,000 range. And I'm estimating, based on the way that they're getting new certifications, that's roughly where we'll be next year.
And once a person gets certified for something, do they ever have to be recertified?
No.
So that it's for lifetime?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Council. Anything on 42?
Make a motion, we excuse the customary thanks.
Thank you.
I have just one question to ask the
Sure.
chief. Chief, you sent back $325,000 in salaries. Could you have taken, and this is just a generalized question, but could you have taken that line item, transferred it over and done some repairs to some of the in-house facilities that, we hear every day from firefighters, especially in public safety, that, they could use newer stuff in the firehouses? Could we have taken that money
Well,
instead of transferring it back?
we actually spent quite a bit of money in the fire stations this year. You know, the plan is to totally renovate Hancock Street. That money's in the budget, and that project is in the works. So to spend any money on that building, I think, would be crazy, because we're probably gonna be moving out of it soon to do the total rehab. And we spent a substantial amount of money at Central Station in the past year. We put new bathrooms in, we put new kitchen in, we put the new doors in that I'm sure you're happy to see. So, I mean, we've done a lot of work in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Only reason
And there's always more, but,
I happened to
again,
be at Hancock Fire Station today, actually, and I didn't realize that there was an overall master plan for Hancock Fire Station.
yeah, we have $3.5 million budgeted for that station.
That was really where I was going, was because I was there this afternoon. But thank you, Chief.
It needs it. If you were there, you know it needs it.
Thank you for appearing, Chief. Any recommendations at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to, you're all set, Chief, thank you. Mr. Mastrocola
you.
from E911. Now we'll be starting off page 47 in your budget books, please. Thank you, Mr. Mastrocola, for appearing.
You're welcome.
And any monies being returned at all?
No, sir.
Nothing at all, okay. Page 47. Council Napolitano.
Through you. Radio maintenance. Been an increase, looks like probably about a substantial increase over previous years. What's involved in that? Why is that?
Well, the main component is it's extremely unpredictable. There's a lot of times that we get an inordinate amount of weather, be it rain or snow. The lines will get wet. You got to call. There's basically two components. There's a fire side and a police side. And when they go down, you just have to call them. If it's a Sunday, if it's Easter morning, you know, their labor bill is 3 times the amount than it would be if it was a Tuesday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It's, a lot of it is mandated by the state. The number of radios you, not radios, we're not talking portables, we're talking the main consoles. A new system came in a year and a half ago that we were mandated to not only purchase it, but to maintain it with a service contract. So the reason for the increase is it's just been, in the past 4 years that I've been there, slowly the radio maintenance annual billing has just increased.
My only concern is just that it's more than doubled by what was expended in 2015. And again, if you're having an ongoing problem where, when weather knocks the systems out, isn't there a proactive approach to be able to, you know, circumvent that issue so this way the system doesn't go down?
Well, I said weather, but that's usually not the main issue. It's just a monitor goes down, a system goes down. A lot has to do with the labor for the specific individual, the technician to come out. We have a service contract with, it's called Cybercom. It's the same company that the PD has. And they're very, very effective. They're very efficient. But they do have to come out when these radios go down, and that is the problem.
Right, I understand that, but we haven't expended $46,000. We've been expending between 20 and 28. So that's why I'm trying to,
Well,
get a grasp of what's different this coming year over past years.
There's a maintenance contract that we buy, that we had to buy.
Okay, we didn't have that prior years?
No, this is this new radio system. And if,
What is the cost of that maintenance contract?
11,000? And if you give me a minute, I'll tell you exactly what it is. And here's the other issue. There's a company called LW Bills. It handles all the fire issues, and that would, the radio maintenance comes under the fire side also. I'm just looking at it right here. We've spent $8,000 so far. We have 15 cents left in the PO that we took out for LW bills since the beginning of the fiscal year. That's another company that, basically, they are the only ones that will service the fire side that we have. So, they have no contract. It's strictly cost plus. You get billed from the moment they leave their office to the moment they get there. And I know I say this every year, but it's really difficult to predict what's going to happen as far as a few things, as far as the maintenance concerned on the fire side, maintenance concerned on the police side. It's an unpredictable number.
Yeah, I'm definitely not questioning your judgment here.
Okay.
Just looking at what's been expended the past years versus what's being asked for next year.
Yeah,
And
what-
it's a substantial increase. Now, the maintenance contract can definitely account for a big chunk of that. So I mean, that's really all, I just wanted to get some clarification. I think you've done that. So I appreciate the answers. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank
But
you,
the maintenance, excuse me, the maintenance contract is the reason why it's increased, it's a Motorola 7500. It's a new system that we're mandated to get by the state. And not only were we mandated to get it, we were mandated to get the service contract to maintain it. And that we put it in this radio maintenance budget this year.
Thank you.
Okay.
All set, Counselor?
Yes.
Thank you. Counsel McLaughlin, we have a big list here, so I would just ask everybody, we have about 5 or 6 speakers in a row, but please don't be redundant with the same questions, so, anybody. Counsel McLaughlin, floor is yours.
I have two questions, Mr. Mascola. On overtime, last year we budgeted 0. We spent $124,269. This year we're appropriated $45,000. First, we didn't appropriate anything. The numbers are just,
We get a grant, we get 2 grants, and they're really not grants, they're reimbursements. One is approximately $116,000, one is approximately $24,000. They have to be used for specific things. They don't just issue the city $116,000. And the way it goes is this: the city fronts the money, city pays everything up front. Months later, after we submit all the necessary, including the canceled check, after we submit it to state 911, then we get a reimbursement. The grants go June 30th, fiscal year to fiscal year. The time you get to apply and your grant starts after it gets okayed from the state. Trouble is, it won't go online July 1 of this year. I didn't get it last year, and I actually took a copy of it, till October. So you had July, August, September, October, before the application went online. So now you fill out the application, you get it, bring it to City Hall, mayor signs it right away, you send it in, and then they say, okay, your $116,000 in that particular case starts October 28th, when they stamp it, till June 30th. So you actually lose 2 to 4 months, and it's no fault of the city, it's when they put the application online. And we call up, and it's every PSAP in the state gets this, every PSAP in the state gets the application at the same time. It's just on their website. So we don't have 12 months to spend the money, we really have 7 to 8 months to spend the money. And the money has to be used for, like, you cannot buy, you can't buy a blackboard, only, or wetboard or something like that for the office. They give you a list of things. I've done 2 budget modifications where one time we needed chairs. Chairs were $2,200 each, so we had to do a budget modification to grab $8,000 that I already allocated for salaries. To answer your question, sir, the reason why it was 0 last year is because I used all the grant money to pay for overtime. We run about $1,800, $2,000 a week, a month. It accumulates. What I did was I grabbed the 116 grant, and I can use it for salaries, or I can use it for the overtime. So this year, because we're a little bit short last year, we're actually going to attempt to fund the overtime budget. That's why last year was 0. That's why this year it's whatever it is, and my glasses on.
You all set with that?
No, I have a follow-up to that question, Mr. Chairman. On that end, Mr. Mascola, if we have that much overtime being spent, should we not look at increasing our manpower in-house, in your opinion?
It's contractual. You're
Okay.
only allowed to have, and I actually brought this with me. So last week's overtime was $3,200. Now, it's summertime. People are allowed to take their vacation time, and, you know, some of us hold back, some of us don't. So, I can only hire so many people based upon the contract. I can't just have people in waiting. It actually takes 3 to 4 months to train an individual. So if I get the okay to hire somebody Monday, they're not going to be sitting at that console by themselves for 4 months, maybe 5 months. Everyone has a little kind of a different learning curve. And like I've said, it's really not an easy job there. The multitasking is phenomenal for those people, and they do a good job at it. And the overtime occurs mainly now during the summer months. And I have as many people as I can hire. If the contract says I can have another part-time person, I'd love to have it. But I can only have so many people in the T&O.
I'm just concerned about that much overtime. We know that each individual down there does a great job, and their job is very stressful on a daily basis. And if they're asking to be asked every week for overtime, right, their job is stressful enough as it is, and they're all doing a phenomenal job. That's where I was just kind of wondering if by bringing somebody else in, does it relieve some of the stress on the individuals that are there now, not to deprive them of their overtime, of course, but just to help them breathe a little bit easier.
I don't receive a lot of complaints about that. I mean, they like the overtime. They're obviously, but the contract calls for certain parameters, you know, and I'm going to take a shift, 2300 to 7 o'clock in the morning. So at 7 o'clock in the morning, there's 3 new folks coming in. If at 6 a.m., one person sprains their ankle getting out of the shower, they're not coming in. Contract calls for that person who thinks they're leaving at 7 a.m. to go down the Cape for the Memorial Day weekend, they're staying. And they have to stay till 11 o'clock in the afternoon. Then the person who was taking their son to lunch at noontime, that usually is scheduled to come in at 3, has to come in at 11. So they split that 8-hour shift. But the law mandates that 3 people have to be there 24/7. So the contract was written to basically to eliminate any of that discomfort or to these people they really have to be able to step in when that shift is empty. There's no option. You have to stay. And, you know, when you talk about the overtime, I had 2 folks. They were out for a couple of months, you know, surgery. That's, again, an unpredictable event. So it's not like there's 7 people in a ID office where 6 people can do the job of 7. So I have, you know, 2 folks out for 2 months each. So that's every single shift, those have to be filled with overtime. And that's how that money, you know, again, I hate to say it, but if I go 12 months and there's nobody sick, then the overtime would be much less. You go a 12-month cycle, and you have 3 people out a couple of months on on sick leave, somebody has to fill in for those shifts.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Counsel-
Mr. Mascola.
Counselor Hanlon?
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mascola, just looking at the line item for above grade differential. You've gone up 50% in that over last year's budget. And last year's budget, you went like 50%. I mean, so far, you've only going to use 50% of what you had for this current year. And that's about what you used for last year. So I was just wondering why you went up the extra 5,000.
The above-grade budget was another, it's a contractual thing. They went from different shift. The afternoon shift that works till 11 gets $1.50 more an hour, and the folks that come in from 2300 to 07, they get $1.75 more an hour. So that was put in their contract. So we budgeted for that. Again, it was done, maybe 4 months ago. So in this year, FY17 budget, I had to factor in basically every person on those 2 shifts, so that's 16 hours times 3 is increased by 25 cents on the afternoon shift, increased 50 cents per hour per person on the evening shift. So that's why I budgeted for that.
And your grade, they're all grade 6 down there?
No,
Are they
sir.
the ones that would take that above grade differential, or could anybody take it?
No, I'm sorry, Ms. Stanley, where are you looking?
He's looking right here at the
The
personnel services.
classification?
Oh. No, the 6 is the senior person.
So are they the ones that would do the above grade?
Well, no, every dispatcher, regardless of their grade, gets the $1.50 and the $1.75. So you could work days, I'm making this up, from 7 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon, and being my newest employee, if you take an overtime shift from 2300 to 07, you will put in that week, just that week, $1.75 more per hour for those 8 hours. So that, it's not reflective upon their grade, it's reflective upon the hours that you work.
Counsel McKinnon?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I want to revert back to the overtime. Is that grant, what's the name of that grant?
There's 2, sir. There's the incentive grant, which is 116, then there's the EMD training grant, which they have to get 16 hours of training a year. And
That's the update.
they,
Bring 'em up to
it's
speed.
basically, yeah, correct. It's just continuing education that the state mandates. And then new employees go to one 40-hour course and one 16-hour course. So again, overtime would fill in. So if I send, you take every employee, 15 folks, 16 hours a day, 16 hours a year they have to go. That 16-hour window has to be filled with overtime while they're at school. So either they go on a day off, which means they get overtime, or they go on they go on a day off, they get overtime. But the person, if they go when they're working, the person that's filling in for them will get the overtime.
Thank you.
That's another reason.
On that, just so I'm clear, so is it a matching grant? So you go from the fiscal year start, you pay through city funds until they come in and match in October, say?
So let's say the PSAP grant, 116,000. I use some of it for overtime.
Yep.
So we will get, I'll take a month. So you get the month of May, if we spend $2,000 a week, so there's $8,000. So we have to submit the payroll deposit slips from, not the deposit slip, the payroll accounting sheet that they give us, as well as their timesheet, as well as my letter and the signature saying that they worked, and then they'll go over and they'll say, okay, you will get $8,000. Then we'll get a notification a month later saying $8,000 will be deposited in the city's funds, and that usually takes another 2 weeks.
Now, this 124, 269.87, that figure there for the overtime, that's FY 2016 expended?
Yes, sir.
You're not anticipating doing that in FY 17? Because it's requesting that lower number there. You see what I'm saying? I mean, that's what I'm looking at.
If I can just jump in
Sure.
to help out a little bit. As he was referring to this, these are actually reimbursement-based grants. So once we get notification
So they're
that
matching?
they're not necessarily matching,
They
they're
don't match.
reimbursement-based. So we'll have the revenue go into a state grant,
And then-
special revenue fund, and once we get that notification, the bulk of that overtime is gonna be reclassified out of the general operating fund and put into the special revenue fund. We're anticipating that happening next year as well. We just we don't anticipate receiving enough grant funds to cover what his overtime needs are gonna be.
I didn't know that.
And how many, Mr. Mascola, how many years is this grant for? Is it a revolving grant every year?
That's
Or-
correct. You gotta
Okay.
reapply every
And then
year.
You do that every, okay. Do you have any unfilled positions right now?
No, sir.
Okay, so basically, this is all driven from, the overtime is driven from mandatory statute, state statute, that you have to fill when people are out, mandatory 4 hours.
That's correct.
Forced 4 hours or whatever. How do they do it? It's a forced 4 hours, is that what it is? Or is it a split
I'm
shift?
sorry, I don't understand. You mean when somebody's out?
Yep.
If somebody calls in for a shift?
6 o'clock in the morning, like you just said.
Okay.
Then
The
they come
person
in.
who thinks they're leaving, they stay 4. The person who thinks they're coming in has to come in 4
So they
hours
get a
early.
mandatory 4.
Correct, so.
And then 4.
Correct.
All right.
And based upon their seniority will be based upon their rate now.
The rate of overtime.
$32 for overtime as opposed to
Now, if they're
26.
working out of grade as well, do you have any of that going on down there? If they work out of title up, say if they were working up in grade?
No, if you're a grade 6, you're a grade 6, no matter what shift you're working.
Okay, so it doesn't matter. If
That's
you were-
correct.
Say
And
if
that's
you weren't the
just-
supervisor, then you became the supervisor for that shift, would that be compensatable?
There is
that
a,
way?
there is a lead person on each shift. It's contractual. There's 3 full-time leads.
Yep.
And then each other, the lead that the full-time leads are not working, there's what we call an alternate lead.
Sure.
But that's in the contract.
Okay. My question, I think, what I'm trying to get to is, so if there was a lead that was sick. and
Oh,
then
good question.
Someone that comes behind them, do they get that compensation?
They have to be a lead, correct.
Okay, so they have to be a lead.
Right.
All right.
Or if it's, the city has the right, meaning me, to appoint an alternate lead. In other words, if there's something that the majority of people go into a wedding or an event.
Sure.
And one of the leads aren't there, then the city has the right to appoint a lead, which is usually based upon seniority for that, only for that particular shift.
For that shift?
Correct.
Would they be compensated higher?
Yes.
Level, okay.
Lead pay, $1 more.
Thank you very much.
Council DeFlorio.
Most of my questions have been answered. In regards to the second line item that says part-time, on page 47. What is that for?
So we have 2 folks, one is a per diem, and one is what I call a will call, or part-time. So the per diem is 2 8-hour shifts. So they're on the books for 2 8-hour shifts. It's usually at 11 at night to 7 in the morning. And then there's a part-time person, a per diem person, which means we get them trained up. 4 or 5 months later, they're basically on a will call, and that's also contractual. The reason why this is done is because, for an example, somebody leaves, quits, which usually doesn't happen, they go to another department within the city, somebody's out for 3 or 4 months. They can only absorb so much overtime. I mean, you just can't absorb it all.
No, I understand.
So, and you can't call up somebody Tuesday and say, come in Monday, because you need 4 to 5 months of training. So I have somebody, currently I'm having somebody in the queue, basically, that you don't have a set shift. You're trained, you're ready to go. Look, I get nobody wants to work 4th of July, 7 to 3. Do you want to take it? Well, they're very eager to take it because they want to get in with the city, they want to start a career. So that's not a problem, but you need somebody trained up to do that, and that's what we do. That's the reason for that number.
Okay, but I noticed that the number, last year you budgeted for $39,955, and you spent $45,137. So that you overspend, which I know that can be done from other salary line items. I understand that. But this year you're going from 45 to 52?
That's correct. I just thought I just needed more money because I was just under budget last year.
Okay.
The contract had a lot to do with it because everything increased. The hourly rate
The
increased,
percentage,
their
right,
per
right.
diem rate increased, their lead pay increased, and the night differential increased.
Okay.
All set, Council?
Yes, thank you.
Council
welcome,
Della Sola.
I had a couple of questions, but they were answered. Just one quick question on the salary, the increase on the salary. Is that as all your employees' pay raises?
That's correct, sir.
Right, just, we said earlier, no one being hired, no extra people being hired at all. You have your set team and that's it?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Any questions on, other questions on 47 or 48? We have a motion for to dismiss the objections. Thank you, Mr. Mastercola.
You're welcome, sir.
Any recommendations? Seeing none, we'll move on to the Chief of Police, Chief Maisy, if you would please join us. 35. Starts out 35, 36, 37, 38, and 39. Counsel DeFlorio, you have the first question.
Well, wait for the chief to sit down.
Chief,
first.
any monies being returned?
Right now, it is not anticipated that there'll be money returned.
Thank you for that. Counsel DeFlorio?
Now, are we going by page?
Yes, page 35.
35 has salaries, but the salary I'm questioning is not on page 35.
All right, so then I would say is hold off till we get to that page. And then when we get to that page, you can ask that question. That way I'm trying to keep it as back, I know once in a while we gotta jump back, but I wanna try to go one page at a time, and then, because if it's about a particular salary, when we get to that salaries page, then you can certainly, ask that question. Counsel McLaughlin on page 35.
You too.
We're going to appropriate an additional $150,000 for overtime from last year's budget to this year's budget. Is that any time frame that we're going to use, or across the board, we'll utilize that throughout the year? Because as we know, the summer months, the warmer weather spikes the interest of
Sure.
not crime, but issues across the city.
Yeah, normally our highest months for overtime are the summer months, July and August in particular, a little bit of June, when people take vacation. But that's, that'll be spread obviously throughout the 12 months. And it's obviously a good increase from what we've had in the past.
And if we find that we need an additional 50,000, 100,000, can we somewhere take it as a line item lateral in your department? I was hoping to see, to be truthful, I was hoping to see 200,000 increase in salary, in overtime. But that's why I'm wondering if there's any fluctuation, if you guys deem it necessary.
Well, I think, if we find out that we're running into trouble, I have no problem putting a request in, or making it work somewhere else in the budget if that's possible.
Okay. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Counsel. Counsel McKinnon?
Mr. Chair, to the chief. Chief, on night differential?
Yes.
Let me see. You expended 194,045.50. You're looking for 300,972 in 2017. What's the reason for that expenditure going up?
Well, we
Or is it gonna
anticipate.
be more?
Yeah, right now, we're down some offices on, obviously, 3/4 of the department works nights. We're down a number of offices. We're increasing, not only gaining those back, but if you look, there's an overall increase in number of offices. So a vast majority of those will be on the night shift, which they'll be entitled to night differential, and that's anybody after 3 o'clock.
Thank you.
Yep.
Counselor Capone?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the chief. Chief, good evening.
Good evening.
There's a couple of line items, if you could just explain them. One of them is special duty. It doesn't look like anything was budgeted for that last year, but this year it's coming in at 105. Could you explain what that is?
Sure, I will. I'll actually point them out. Special duty, 2 below that, first responder.
Yep.
Below that, TASER, language, and MPTC. Those are all new stipends that were negotiated in the last contract that just got signed recently. It was over a 2-year period. Those are basically stipends that actually reward officers for a variety of things. Special duty is officers that are assigned to positions that usually require additional training above and beyond the regular training that everyone else goes through. For example, officers in the criminal investigation unit go to much more technical training now because of the types of crimes they have to investigate has changed dramatically. And then like the first responder stipend is, we're doing a lot more with things like naloxone for overdoses and carrying more equipment. And then the TASER, as you know, we outfitted the whole department. Again, it's additional training. Everyone has to carry it. And then language, we're actually finally compensating officers that speak multiple languages, so which I think is good. They get used a lot in the diverse city that we have here. And then MPTC is instructor certifications. We have a number of officers who hold instructor certifications, and we're and teach, so we're rewarding those officers for that.
Great. Thank you, Chief. You anticipated all my other categories, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, I figured I'd lump them together for you, make it easy.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief Mazie, when an officer does detail work,
Yes,
the company pays the city, and the city pays the officer, is that correct?
correct. There's a fund
So this overtime doesn't necessarily mean that it also, the detail work comes in under that overtime also?
No, separate. So details
So
do
it's
not,
separate.
yeah, so there is a separate fund established by the city. The city pays the officers for the details that are conducted on private contracts. The city then bills those private contracts, and it goes back into that fund.
Right.
This overtime fund compensates officers for any shift work, which is the majority of it. When we're down officers on a shift, we're down a supervisor, special events that the city holds. When we may have people, for example, if an officer's off duty, he has to come up and attend a liquor board hearing. There's a whole slew of different
you're right.
reasons.
No, I
Yeah.
understand that. But where does the detail work show?
That's not on here. I don't think that shows anywhere in the budget because
doesn't show
it's
on-
not a budgeted item.
It's not a
It's not a
budget
budgeted item. At least
So
not here it
that's
isn't.
basically
I
in
don't- There is I know there is a fund. That's not on here, though.
Can the auditor answer that question? Is there a fund for?
Sure, there's a separate fund, it's an agency fund, it doesn't report revenues and expenditures, because there's actually no cost to the
Right.
city. So when an officer performs the detail, we pay the officer, and then we also then bill the company where the work was performed, and the company
Right, so-
reimburses us.
No, I know how detail works. But the point I'm trying to say is, if National Grid comes in and they request 4 officers to do detail, you bill National Grid at the same price that you're paying the police officer, or is it billed more?
There's a 10% administrative fee that goes on top of it. So the officer gets an hourly rate plus 10%.
Plus 10%?
Yes.
Okay, that was
Yes.
my answer, the 10%. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council Capone asked all my questions.
I
except one.
apologize.
Maybe you answered it, but I didn't hear it. The license to carry stipend?
Oh, I missed one. Yeah, well, that's not a new one, yes. We require, not every department does, but we require all officers to apply for and maintain a license to carry while they're employed by us.
Okay, just a question. I
Yeah.
thought they already had that right to carry a license. I wasn't at all.
So they have to be able to maintain. Some officers and agencies aren't able to apply for and maintain a license to carry, which the old days we used to call that just carrying on the badge. So some agencies allowed officers to carry on the badge, which can be a risky proposition if officers get themselves into some kind of troubles at times.
So along with this comes some sort of training
Well, training every year, but the fact is, to maintain, we know that there's a little more scrutiny involved if they can maintain a license to carry, as opposed to someone who doesn't have to maintain a license to carry.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Counselor Hanlon stole my question. So I'm all set. Thank you.
People are leaving their mics on, so I would ask you after, every time you speak, when you're done speaking, to please, there's, I guess, a lot of chitter chatter that's coming back over the airways, so. Counsel McLaughlin, then Counsel McKinnon.
I have 2 questions for the chief, and you may have already stated one, the chief, I apologize if so. First responder stipend. We budgeted 0 last year. We're budgeting 163,500 this year.
Wait,
No.
Counsel, that was, I know, I mean, that's one of the things, and I hate to interrupt, but the question was already asked and answered.
That's good. I want an answer from the chief. Thank you, though.
I know, but I'm saying it was already answered.
Okay, so I didn't hear the answer, so I'd like to get a clarification on it.
So we're just gonna repeat questions. I'm just saying, Counsel, that's what,
Chief,
the idea is that we ask a question, the chief answers it.
It's new. It's new in the collective bargaining agreement.
What was your other question, Counsel? Okay, Counsel McKinnon.
Just on overtime, Chief, real quick, is that, you think that's gonna be an accurate figure, or do you think there may need a little bit more for this summer?
It's hard to predict. I mean, I think it's a good start. I mean, taking into consideration that we're hiring officers, usually the more officers you put on the platoons, the overtime rates will drop, but we're also trying to increase the amount of supervisors we have on the
Sure.
street at any given time. So I think it's a good starting point. It's hard, it's not an exact science. It depends on how, healthy the workforce stays and how busy things get as well.
So that's a fair price then, right there?
Yeah, well, it's a significant increase that we appreciate, I can tell you that.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Counsel. We're gonna move on to next page. 36, thank you. Counsel DePiero.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the first line item, Chief, ticket processing and tickets, there was 0 expended in 15, and it was 45 in 16, and it's almost double in 17. Is that just due to an increase in ticket writing amounts and so on?
So, the parking clerk had a separate budget. They come under me. There was always a connection between us and the police in the parking office, but they come under me, so their budgeted items are under me. That's why it was 0 and 15. And there has been an increase, although we are looking at going to electronic ticket writing, which there'll be expenses associated with it, but I think the cost will be shifted on what we're actually spending money on.
I see. Thank you.
Yep.
Counsel De La Sola.
On the bottom for new patrol vehicles, 116,000 up to 240,000. How many vehicles is that?
That's approximately 6 outfitted, black and white cruisers with full equipment, lights, sirens, the whole works, cages and.
Computer?
Not necessarily computer, no. That's separate, that'll be separate item.
That's separate?
Yeah.
Are we going back with the Fords? I know you'd probably.
We are. Ford Utilities have been what we started going with the last couple of years after the bad Dodge Charger experiment. And they seem to be working good. They're roomy, they're reliable, they're good in the winter, especially the hills and snow and so on. And the officers seem to like them as well.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Counsel Capone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to the chief. Following along that same line of thought, right below it, department vehicles.
Yep.
We've got one in there for 38. What vehicle are we anticipating for that?
So we look, some of the vehicles outside of the normal frontline vehicles, right now, we need to start looking at replacing, for example, the traffic vehicle in a traffic unit that's used for commercial truck enforcement. That in a van, we have a van, marked van. Those 2 vehicles are starting to age, and we haven't decided which one needs to be replaced first, but those monies will be going to one of those.
How
this
old
year's.
is that van?
The van, see, the problem, the van's old. The van's probably, that van's around 12 years old.
12
It
years.
has probably shockingly low mileage from what you would think, but, 12 years
Doesn't number out,
is just a long, things start happening. Not that, I mean, they're both running in good working condition, but we try to plan so that if that goes down, not only do we use it for patrol, that's a special vehicle that we use to move officers around special events and so on.
Okay.
It's one of a kind that we don't have many of those.
Thanks, Chief.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Is there no other questions? Yeah, Counselor Hanlon, then Counselor DeFlorio.
Just one question, Chief. I'm looking through your budget, and I do not see, maybe it's here someplace, about repairing of vehicles. Is that the department vehicle?
No, that does not, repairing and maintenance of our vehicles does not come under my budget. That comes under city services.
Okay. Okay, so that-
Yep.
Thank you, Counselor. Next page, 37. Counselor DeFlorio, you can ask your question now.
Thank you. Chief, you're getting a decrease in pay?
I'm sorry?
Why is your pay being decreased?
I believe, so FY '16 reflects what would have been appropriated for my salary.
Well, last year, you were appropriated 158,000, is that correct? And this year, you're getting 154. Is that I'm just asking, in case that's a typo, and it needs to be corrected.
Yeah, no, I didn't receive a raise over the last fiscal year.
So you didn't get the 158 last year?
No.
I'm missing, you didn't get the 158 last year?
I don't believe so, no.
So last year, you were paid 154?
I believe that's accurate, yes.
Okay.
All set, Counselor?
Now, how long is your appointment for? Have we appointed you? I'm sorry. I don't know if that's a question.
No, I haven't had a reappointment lately, no.
Are you due for an appointment? Yes, you are.
I believe I
Okay.
am, yes.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Counselor McKinnon.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the chief. Chief, the Quinn bill, are these all grandfathered in Quinn bills, or
So,
the percentage-wise?
yeah,
That's why
no,
I'm-
so we have a number of officers who received Quinn bill.
Yep.
5 years ago, when they did away with the Quinn bill, officers are not able to receive the Quinn bill benefit. So everybody.
Any new officers, right?
Any new officers that come on, the only officers that would be entitled to Quinn bill, that would be new, are officers that lateral transferred in that received Quinn bill from their old agency.
They would come with them?
Would come with them. And I know there's an exploration of looking at some kind of education incentive that I think both, the unions and where management's interested in
In
looking
the
at.
state or in just the city, yeah?
I'm sorry? No, locally. A lot of this stuff is
okay.
being done by the local
Yeah, it's
cities and towns. It's really a local issue.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Counselor DeFlorio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This question is for the auditor. If the chief didn't get paid the 158 last year, why is it in here as 158?
The 158 is what was budgeted for the chief to receive in FY16, but what was budgeted didn't reflect his actual pay. What's budgeted for in FY17, I believe, represents a proposed raise from fiscal 16 into fiscal 17.
But most of the, I don't know, there's something about this, most of the, so you're telling me if we appropriate, this budget's in front of us, okay?
Yes.
If you're telling me that the city treasurer, I just happened to go into that page, is getting paid 84,000, he may not have gotten paid 84,000 last year?
That's possible, correct.
Well, then if that's the case, I want a list of all the people that got raises last year, what's in last year's book and what they're actually getting paid. I would like that list before the next budget hearing. Thank you.
Counselor McLaughlin.
I don't agree very often with Council DeFlorio. No, I'm joking, Russell.
That's all right, you don't have to agree with me, I speak for the taxpayers.
This is Demus. I agree with Council DeFlorio. If we're not giving people what we're appropriating here at budget time, then what are we doing here, to be honest? We're basically wasting our time. If we're going line by line, and we're discussing salaries, we're discussing other line items, and then not you, but the administration of the city is going ahead and doing what they so choose to do, then why are we here? What are we doing? And I'm a little confused of the fact that it shows that the chief should have got 158,188, and he got whatever somebody deemed necessary, or deemed appropriate. It's sort of a waste of our time to be here to look at this budget if you guys are just going to do whatever you so choose to do. I'm a little confused of where else does that appear in the budget that occurs, that there's an appropriation for a particular salary and the city or the mayor or whomever goes ahead and appropriates a salary that they seem necessary. So you guys aren't giving us accurate information. You're not giving us what it actually represents as a budget. Because right now, I'm looking, saying there's 4,000 so much difference between appropriation and last year and the request this year. There's a $4,000 discrepancy of where did that go? Did that go to another line item? Did that go somewhere else? And again, I apologize to have to sit here and talk about the chief's salary in front of him, but I'm sort of baffled, to be honest, of why we're even here in the first place at this point.
Sure, and I get your point. I don't have any particular information on the chief's salary, what was budgeted in the prior year versus what he's currently making. That was a decision that happened prior to my arrival. What I can tell you, though, is the reason why there's an amount in each of the fiscal year 16 appropriations, you're always going to see some variances. For example, if you grab a particular union individual, if we have an individual that's in there at a step 6, that person retires, we then bring that person in at a new person in at a step 1.
Absolutely.
We can't actually change the FY16 appropriation because that's how the budget was formulated at that time.
Nope, and that's very reasonable. A union step is completely different than what we're talking about a non-union appointee. A union is, you're right, if somebody leaves a higher step and they get replaced by somebody at a beginning step, that's a completely different scenario, and I completely agree with you on that. But I would like to know, as Council DeFlorio said, what other non-union positions are actually not being fulfilled at the number that is appearing before us. Because, again, if we're gonna do that, we're wasting all of our times up here, to be honest with you. And I don't have much of it to waste. It's to be truthful with you. I'm a little frustrated to see this tonight, because I was going to ask the same question, is why? And where did it go? If we appropriate $158,000, that's what we gave last year in the budget. Where did the additional 4,000 some odd dollars go? It just vanished into midair.
Well, I know the money's in the budget.
But what do we spend it on, though, Chief? It should have been spent on your salary. It should have been given to you in your earning. But it was spent somewhere else. Show me where else where it was spent, where there was an additional 4,000 and change appropriation.
All things being equal, assume where it was budgeted, the main salary line item, say those salaries were fully expended through the end of fiscal 16. In this particular case, that line item would be $4,000 less than what was budgeted.
But can you show me where that is? Can you pinpoint to me
Where that's included in the budget? Sure, if you actually go to page 35, back to the very front of the police department's budget, that very first line item, salaries.
Yep.
The FY16 budget was $9,381,000.
Okay.
No, he's asking for FY16.
FY16 was 9,381,900. We've expended to date 7,697,000. There's no clear indication of again, $4,000. You know,
Well, there wouldn't be
if
because
salary
we're not at
showed
year-end.
that we spent 9,781,000, you would say, okay, there's the $4,000 that went from the chief in lateral transfer over to salaries, and you would say, okay, that makes sense. But it doesn't show where the $4,000 has gone to, and
The
why.
$4,000 hasn't gone anywhere. It was budgeted in fiscal 16. It's still a component of the fiscal 16 budget, and we have yet to fully expend and complete fiscal year 16 expenditures. So it would be possible for you to actually see right now at this point a $4,000 variance.
So we are expecting to spend in salaries 9,700,000 and change in overall salaries. If you're accurate, you know, if your information is correct, because you're saying the 4,000 and change from the chief's position went to salaries, there should be a $4,000 increase in salaries, which would go to 9,700,000 and change at the end of the fiscal year.
Right, that's assuming that every one of these line items for the police chief, from the captains, lieutenants down, if everything that was budgeted for fiscal 16, if all of those individuals, there were no changes, there were no laterals, if everybody was paid exactly as what they were budgeted, except for the chief, then yes, I would expect a $4,000 unspent balance from that appropriation line.
But again, you can come before us and give us any set of numbers you so choose. You're not you, because I know that you take your job very serious and you do a good job.
Sure.
Somebody is not representing numbers correctly in front of me. The way I see it, if somebody can explain it to me in layman's terms that I can understand this, I'll move from my point. But my point tonight is we've come to find out that the numbers that are presented to us are not accurate numbers. So I feel like we're wasting our time up here until somebody shows us in layman's term the appropriation of monies that are accurately represented and what will be spent.
Well, I would say that the amount that was budgeted for the chief was an accurate number and was what the council appropriated in fiscal 16. So I would say that that is an accurate number. The amount that's budgeted for the chief for fiscal year 17 reflects, I believe it's about a 2% increase over what the chief is currently making in fiscal 16. So I would say that is an accurate number as well. So the difference between what was budgeted in 16 versus what was budgeted in 17, I can't explain to you. I don't have the information as to what the variance is between why it was budgeted at the level it was for fiscal 16 versus why it was budgeted at the level for fiscal 17. What I can tell you is that the amount that was budgeted for 16 is accurate because that is what the council approved. It's not what the chief is currently receiving in pay,
I,
but it
I
is
agree.
accurate.
I agree that the city council did their due diligence and appropriated a number that they thought deemed appropriate for their salary, of the chief. I don't agree that someone beyond these council chambers appropriated the right amount of money into salary for the chief of the chief. You know, I don't know, and I don't really want to ask the chief tonight and put him on the spot, but did he walk out of here last budget session thinking his salary was going to be $158,188, and at the end of the day, it ends up being $4,000 less? That's
That's a question for the chief. I don't
again, I'm not going to ask him that tonight. I have no problem, because I think the chief deserves 150, 188, because I believe that he does an outstanding job for our community. But I'm going to yield the floor to my colleagues and move on.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Capone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand the concern of my colleagues, and I understand that whatever is budgeted for salary lines will stay in that area, could be used within the budget, the department rather. We just want to make sure that everyone's being treated fairly. We've got union folks, we've got non-union folks, and we want to make sure everyone's getting a decent wage for the work that they're doing. So I share the concerns about knowing exactly where we're at. I understand it's a ballpark, but I'd like to know the specifics between the two, and that's something that you can get to us another time. I'd appreciate that. Chief, I have a couple questions for you. If you are uncomfortable answering any of these questions, don't hesitate to say, I'd rather not.
Sure.
Typically, the renewal contracts, are they 3-year contracts?
It's been three-year appointment in contract that usually goes subsequent with it.
Okay. When was the last time you had a renewal contract? When did it expire, the last one?
I prefer not to get into the details.
that's
I mean,
fine.
It's really, it's a personnel issue. I mean, if you wanted to talk offline,
Okay.
I'd be glad to talk, but
Then one other question, and if you're uncomfortable with it, don't answer this one. Did you make more money this year than the prior year? Or did you stay the same?
I believe it's the same, roughly the same.
Okay. All right, thank you, Chief. I don't have any other questions.
Counsel McKinnon, did you want to speak still?
Yes, quick question through you, Mr. Chair, to the chief. Chief, just two quick questions. FYI 16, did you receive a raise of 2% cost of living raise?
No, sir.
Okay. You're scheduled FY 17 to get at least a 2% raise, correct?
I believe so.
Okay. So that's where, right now, there's an issue, because you were supposed to receive one in FY 16 and never got it. You actually lost 4,000 from understanding what's going on here compared to the numbers. That's what's the numbers in the book. So this year, you're gonna get a 2% raise and bring you up to those, not to that number there. So you'll still be, you'll be losing money again this year, coming up FY 17. Correct?
Chief, you don't have to answer that if
You
you
don't have to
want.
answer, I mean, but you see what we're doing, we're trying to figure this out. I mean, this is
I understand.
This is gonna go to the auditor. I want a question to the auditor. What we need from you, sir, is that we need clarification on this item here. If there's any additional department heads that come up that are actually going to basically return money or not return money, and there's any influx in their salary, we need to know that and where that funding is going, just so it's transparency. Right now, we're having an issue with this, and we'll probably continue having an issue for a little bit here until it's clarified, but we need clarification on it. So if you could do that for us, sir, by the next meeting, that would be great.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Counsel DeFlorio.
Thank you. To the auditor, I have last year's budget book in front of us, and I know you weren't here, and I hate to put anybody on the spot, but I've been up here 11 years, and I like things very, very fairly. I don't like a budget that goes up and down. We pick and choose who we give raises to, and who we don't give raises to. Last year, we did a lot of studies. Based on the studies, some people went up 18,000, which they didn't get, 15,000, so on and so on. And I asked the mayor to do everybody in the city, because I figure when you're fair, you're fair. I feel that when you're doing your job, you deserve. If you're not doing your job, then you shouldn't be here. So, my point is, I have the budget book in front of me, okay? And in fiscal year 15, the chief was making $150,960. Fiscal year 16, $156,288, and the mayor asked for $158,188. We appropriated $158,188. That's what he should have been getting last year. That's what we appropriated. And I understand you could do anything you want with salary line items, but if we appropriate a certain amount for that individual, he's supposed to get it. So my point is, you can move salary line items around. So if the chief left for 3 months and there was an extra $30,000 in there, you can give that $30,000 anywhere you want. But if we appropriated $158,188 for the chief, that's what he should have got last year, and you owe money. And the book is right here. I'll give you the copy.
I have it right here. Yeah, Lorraine just gave it to me.
Thank you. Thank you, Counselor.
Actually, I think there's been enough said on this matter. I'm content to wait until the auditor is able to provide the information that we've requested him. At this point, I think we're just beating it to death. Point has been well made, and I think we need to move on.
Counselors, what I'm gonna do is, I mean, if you have any questions on any of the other pages, if not, Chief, and I hate to do this to you, but if it was appropriate, the last night of our budget, which is June 2nd, if you could appear that night, and then maybe by that time we'll have the information, and then additional follow-up questions, because we may continue to go on and on tonight. We have other department heads here, so if it's possible to appear at the last meeting, June 2nd, and hopefully Mr. Demas will have that information for us. People can ask any additional follow-up questions at that time, and then at that point, we can make any recommendations. Like I said,
Okay.
because to go forward and not knowing anything else, I don't think we'd be doing due diligence. So if it's all right with the council, if they have no problem with that, I would like to invite the chief back at our last meeting and a budget meeting and so forth. But thank you for appearing, Chief.
Okay.
Council McLaughlin on,
Mr. Chairman, I'm actually going to rise on a point of personal privilege if I can, for a second.
hold on 1 second.
Sure, go ahead.
Do we have more questions? Are there more pages? Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yes, you excuse, Chief, with a customary thanks.
Are there more pages for us to go through?
No, listen, Counsel, I did say that at the beginning. Yes, I just asked if there was no other questions on the other pages. I said, what we can do is we can have the chief back before us to ask any follow-up questions that we may have. But also, in the meantime, we'll have Mr. Demas's information in front of us. So if it may pertain to something
Oh, okay.
else in
I'm
the
sorry.
book.
Yeah, that's fine.
I was just
So
checking
then
with the,
excuse with
thank you. So, Chief, you are excused with a customary
Okay.
thanks.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for
All
appearing.
right, thank you. Okay.
And Council McLaughlin, I was just checking on, just to make sure that it was proper at this time, but you have the right to the floor on a personal privilege.
In all due respect, and to all of my colleagues, I think they can somewhat agree with me. I truly do not believe that we can go forward tonight with this budget until we know what these numbers are, even in the additional departments. We're sitting up here talking about a bunch of numbers that absolutely mean nothing at all until we know for sure that it is what is actually.
Counsel, I don't mean to interrupt you, and I'm sorry. I mean, you are making a good point, but under the rules, the clerk informs me, under the rules of personal privilege, that's not one of the things. That's under the thing, because you did ask for personal privilege, and that's not, that's more of just a general discussion than personal privilege.
Can you reference the ordinance that shows that?
I'm going by what the clerk. Safety, health, integrity,
Okay,
personal property.
all right, whatever.
Thank you. Okay, we have, next department, Elaine Silver, Acting Director for the Health Department, pages 63, 64, and 65. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Silver. And also, too, for the record, we have Mr. Sapino joining us up here also. Ms. Silver, Mrs. Silver, any money being returned? Any monies being returned?
Yes, approximately 71,000 will be returned. Majority of that will
Thank
be
you.
from salaries.
Thank you. Okay, page 63, Counsel McKinnon.
Let me see. Overtime. Is that a accurate figure that you're requesting? It was 185.25 expended FY 2016, and now it's 1,700.
Yes, the overtime budget would be used in the event that the nurses have to come back to work according to the contract that they have. So they have to be paid a certain amount of minimum hours. So with the contract being new, that's what we did for next year.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And then, is there any additional nursing staff that's going to be added to your?
Just, there's one position that is vacant, an RN position that is vacant, that will be filled at the beginning of the new school year.
Okay, and then, I know there's a grant that someone's working on, you're gonna be hiring someone?
Yes, there is a grant coming in from the Department of Public Health that will be fully funded by the Department of Public Health. That person's salary and everything will be funded through that grant.
And
That's,
what's that for, and what's the title of that?
the grant is for opioid
Yeah,
and substance abuse.
I'm just trying to get it out of you.
Yeah, that's okay. That's all right.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Capone?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a question about the funding, but I do notice that under the expenses lines, there are two separate lines for professional development. Could you
Yes.
just explain what
Sure.
the difference is between the two?
There's two accounts for professional development. There's the professional development that is used just for the school nurses, and that would be used for them for their nursing license, CPR training, any kind of mandated training and education that would be required for them in their position. The other one is for the positions in the office. That would be for myself, for the public health nurse, for our mandated training and educational purposes.
Okay, thank you very much. No other
Thank you,
questions.
Counselor. Counselor Hanlon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one quick question on what Councilman Capone said. Where do you go for your training?
Where do we go for training? We're required by the Department of,
Where do you- just where do you-
where?
what city?
Anywhere. It goes anywhere from Chicopee to the Cape, to Marlborough, to Malden, to Cambridge.
Anything out of state?
No, we do not attend, no, nothing yet.
Thank you. My question is on medical waste. You just about doubled that. And I need to know what extra things you're doing, because I know you must be doing a lot of extra things to come up with that waste.
The medical waste itself, the disposal, if you noticed, it wasn't funded. It was funded for a very low amount, for about $650. We have increased that due to the amount of the increase in the medical waste disposal. As you know, we did obtain CHOPS containers for both the police station and the health department through a grant, and we are continuing to provide the services to empty that. We also do have a program now that we have put into effect for citizens to come in. They dispose of their needles here at the health department, and in return, we give them a little tiny, little container to put those into.
Okay, one other question I have is on the mosquito control.
Yes.
It's gone up $2,000. I don't mean to be funny. Is there any type of mosquito we're looking for?
No, that's in a general, that's the same mosquitoes. Let's hope it's just the same mosquitoes that have flown in here in the last few years. I know they don't bring any distant relatives, I guess.
I think last night saying that new strain of.
Yes, there is a new Intrepid, yeah, yeah.
Doesn't reach Massachusetts, thankfully, but who knows about the year after. That's what I was wondering about. Any different strains of mosquitoes, or are they all the same as far as we're concerned?
As far as we're concerned and as far as we know at this point.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Counselor. Page 64, Counselor Napolitano, then Capone.
Thank you, and I apologize in advance. This is probably going to set the theme for the rest of the budget hearings.
That's okay.
I realize you're sitting as acting director right now?
Yes, that is correct.
This is probably more for the auditor. The amount of the salary for the Director of Health and Human Services last year was appropriated at 87, and this year it's at 81. Is that anticipated that the director will be making less than the former director?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And how long have you been filling in as an acting director?
Since July of 2000, last year, July of 2015.
Are you earning the salary of the director at this point?
I am earning the salary that says the nursing supervisor. If you notice the appropriation in FY16, and it went up in FY for 17. That is what I received. Mhm.
Is that part of the salaries, the monies that were being returned?
No, the money that's being returned is being returned into the Director of the Health and Human Services. That position was not fully filled all year, so it was filled later on this year, so that difference of that 71,000 would be approximately what was left from there.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Counsel Capone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On 2 lines with the positions, we're looking at supervising nurse and public health nurse. With public health nurse, I noticed that there was a 2% COLA and there was reclassification. What was the base of the reclassification? Because I see it's a jump. Fiscal year 2015, it was 44, fiscal year 16, 45, and then fiscal year 17, it's 69. So that's about a $24,000 jump from last year. And I'm wondering what the basis of the reclassification
The basis was other job opportunities in public health with the same amount of duties that the public health nurse here had, and the opportunity that we would be able to offer the best for the public health nurse. The public health nurse is a full-time public health nurse. She also covers for me as the nursing supervisor, and she is also being cross-trained in the event that I wasn't here, that there was an interim director thing. She also is prepared for that and being taught.
Okay. And then with the supervising nurse, which is yourself, I believe.
That's
and
it.
Wearing many hats as acting director. And this may be a question for the auditor. I see that we have a bump up there. In terms of when we get a director, is this salary, the salary that's in here now at 76,986, which is a bump up of a little over $16,000 from last fiscal year. Does part of this reflect compensation for acting as the acting director versus the supervisor? And if so, eventually when there is an actual director appointed, will this salary change at all for the supervisor?
The salary is not going to change for the supervisor.
Okay.
There's been some organizational updates within the department, which is why the proposed salary for next year for the director is a little less, and you see that the supervising nurse's salary went up. So
Right.
it's just a restructuring of job duties.
All right, I just want to make sure that we're fair to the supervising nurse, because she's acting as the director, and, you know, she's doing more work than the supervisor nurse position should be. So I want to make sure she's being compensated for that in the interim. And that's why I was wondering if, when a director is appointed, if this shifts at all. So the answer is no, but she's still doing the job of the director right now.
No, she's not.
She's
No,
not.
she isn't.
Okay.
I'm the director.
Steve.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that's why we have the
Of-
Director of Health and Human Services.
Services.
That's correct.
Okay. So I thought it was a vacancy because of that. So the acting is no longer the case?
It's,
Or-
yeah, it's gone.
Okay. Oh,
It's
so
gone, and
you're
now
in
we
the
have
position.
that.
Okay, I
That's
was
why we have that.
confused.
Yeah, no.
It's
All right.
confusing,
All
sorry.
right. So Steve's the board, you are
Mm-hmm.
the director. So, okay, that clearly explains why we don't have to worry about the number shifting.
Right. Steve has not yet been appointed.
Appointed.
I believe
Okay.
department head appointments are coming before the board very, very soon. And as such, she is, Elaine is still the acting department head, which is why she's presenting and why Steve's also sitting here with us.
Okay, good. Good. Now I have it. That would have been a good lead on. When do we anticipate the appointment for the director coming before the council? Or is it coming with the budget?
I don't have a specific date for that.
Okay.
I know that it is soon, I don't
Mr.
know which.
O'Donnell here, Kevin, if you'd like to answer that.
That will be on the agenda for the next council meeting.
Thank you
Okay.
for that, sir.
Thank you very much. I don't have any other questions. Thank you for the information.
Thank you, Counselor.
You're welcome.
Counselor Della Sola.
I hope this question wasn't answered. Director, Joint Committee, it's 0 now.
What happened there is the city is still working closely with the joint, we know how important the joint committee is and the work they do. But the joint committee themselves have done restructure and they reorganized what they're doing, and they no longer have a
That's a good thing. Another question, the wellness coordinator went from 36,000 to 21,000.
The wellness
Per
coordinators were in FY16 budgeted to go full-time, and due to some job descriptions and some changes in our reorganization, their position stayed at the part-time 20 hours, which it had been previously appropriated back, I believe, in FY15.
So it seems we're reorganizing and we're saving money on the other end.
Yes, we are.
And we're, so you're only looking at for 21,000 for this year and next year,
That is correct.
correct? While I'm up here, let me look on this quick. And you're actually gonna hire, a nurse, halfway down the page, it's $0 for last year. And you're looking for $48,747 this year?
Yes, that would be a new position for an RN in the school.
It is, so there's two total, correct?
There's one that has already been appointed, this nurse here. There's one that she's 0 here, and her FY is for 48. She started already at 42, just at the end. I think she's been here now since probably December, January, and she took over a position that a nurse had resigned, so she slid into that position.
Okay, just so the public knows, these nurses throughout the school system, correct?
Yes, they are, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Council McLaughlin.
On page 62, Council Del Sol asked half of the question. Wellness-
Council, just to correct you, 62 is not on the,
64, I apologize.
thank you.
Looking at a lot of numbers tonight. Wellness coordinator. They stated part-time position, but we've appropriated 36,000. So there's a difference between the two positions of about $30,000 because there's about 15,000 in each item. Where does that reflect anywhere else in this budget? We appropriated 36,000 for each. We spent 21,000. So about $15,000 difference. Total, it's 30. Where is that in this budget? Where does it reflect it?
I'm not following your question. The 36 is what was budgeted for fiscal 16.
Yes.
The 21 is what's budgeted for fiscal 17.
So I'm asking if we kept, so our director said that we kept them at a part-time position, which was 21,000 last year, which is gonna be again this year. But we appropriated 36,000 last year in anticipation that we were gonna make them full-time
Sure.
positions. We didn't do that. We kept their salary at 21,000. By appropriating 36,000, we have voted, we appropriated that money.
Fair enough.
So between the positions is about a $30,000 difference, because 15 in each position. What did we do with the $30,000?
Came with us. I believe that 30,000 came in because that was appropriated at FY in July 1st, okay, of 2015. After July 1st of 2015, my salary was bumped up. So the difference that was left over from them came over to me.
And you're the nursing supervisor.
Nursing
technically,
supervisor, that's right. The salary went from that's $60,585.
To 76, so that explains one part of it. It explains 15. 16,000.
Right.
16,000 of it.
And
so we're missing.
Then also you had Sabrina, who was the public health nurse, who went from 45 to 99. And if I'm correct, I can't remember the right date, I want to say that her reclassification came out in probably November of 2015. So the difference in her salary there would also have been able to come from that money that had been appropriated in those two positions.
So what is the difference now of public health nurse line item? I guess they're all the same, but it's 45,299 to 69,437. If we changed her salary last year because of reclassification, what did that bump up to last year versus what we're appropriating this year? What is the difference in the middle of 2 years? The 2% cost of living, is there an additional, or is she currently at the salary of 69,437?
She's currently at the salary of 69,000 due to the reclassifications that would have taken place during the fiscal year.
Yeah.
So you,
So Mike, that's,
I have to be honest, I don't like to admit this, but I'm confused.
Mike, that's put it this way, all right, that's 30,000, let's just use that number, that's 30,000 you were saying was appropriated.
Yep.
That we didn't use. But that 30,000 that we didn't use on those salaries went to Elaine and Sabrina's new salaries that started last year.
Okay.
So, you know what I mean, so that 30,000 that you had appropriated last
Yep.
year, for those positions that, even though they went to full-time, they went to they stayed at part-time, and that 30,000 went to their.
But if we take, and Steve, and I do to a point, and you're very personal different, and I'm not gonna argue with you on this issue, but if you take the increase of both, the temporary director and the other individual, take their increase, their salary increase, it is actually greater than $30,000. So if you're comparing that, we're moving 30,000 in, but we're spending 45,000, hypothetically, we're spending 45,000. Now we're at a deficit of $15,000. So the numbers are just have me absolutely confused. And these were some of the questions that I really went over this budget over the weekend and tried to make sense of it because I'm not the smartest kid in town. But there was a lot of these types of things that came up that they're just not making a lot of sense, to be honest. Because, right, if we took what you can do, add 30,000, but it's greater than what we had extra. So where did that additional money now come to? So there's a whole lot of shifting of numbers.
There are a whole
And
lot of
that's-
shifting, and I can see where it would be confusing, especially because, like you, I hadn't been part of this process last year and wasn't here for a majority of the changes. But there's always a number of changes that are happening within a department throughout the year. You have vacancies, you have positions that go unfilled for a while, and as a result, you have to pay people above what you normally would be paying them to assume the additional duties, filling into those positions. So there are a number of items that it does appear that individuals are being paid at a different rate than what they were budgeted in the prior year. I think if I understand what the council is looking for correctly, you're looking for a difference between what was budgeted in the prior year for each position and what is currently being paid. And I think I know how to provide that information to you, and we'll provide that information to you. You're asking for a specific dollar amount to come up and have these numbers work out perfectly in the specific case. And I think there's more than just 2 or 3 positions that are falling into the equation. It may be 5, 6, 7, 8 positions within this budget. So it'd be very difficult for me to tell you that we took 15 from this position, 15 from this position, and reallocated it between these other 5 positions. I don't have that information in front of me, but I think we'll be able to provide that information to you as soon
And that's
as
why
possible.
I'm not sure that we should even continue to discuss this, because there are so many of these types of changes that I don't think anything was done underhanded or misrepresented. I just think there was a shift of numbers, and it happens every day in life and in business. But to represent something to us, or to present something to us, it's not really what it is. So I'm looking at basically fictitious numbers and data.
I would disagree with that classification. What you're looking at, and what you're looking at in these FY16 appropriation column, is what the council actually appropriated. We cannot change those numbers. That's what the council appropriated. Now, what we're putting in for the FY17 request is just that. It's a request for an amount for each position for each individual. The fact that what was appropriated in fiscal 16 may not have been paid during fiscal 16, that's a number for, that's an issue to, that we would address on a separate matter. But I disagree with the categorization that these are fictitious numbers, because they reflect exactly what was appropriated in the prior year, and they're reflecting what is being proposed for these individuals to be receiving in fiscal 17.
But Mr. Demas, in all due respect, and I do respect you a lot, because you're very good in your job, every single one of these numbers could be different than what was paid out last year. Any single position. Now that we've learned tonight that the chief's position isn't what was actually appropriate, every single one of these numbers could be different. Who knows at this point if a registered nurse made $54,600 last year was what she was actually paid, or he was actually paid. He or she could have been paid $52,000, and there's a $2,000 lateral transfer somewhere. So I'm not really sure that we have accurate information in front of us, and that's what I'm trying to get at tonight is, it doesn't sit well with me that
Counsel.
we've discovered this several times. tonight.
Counsel, I know, and I do appreciate that, and you are correct about that, but to keep the process moving along, I think what I would recommend then is maybe going forward at a council meeting, or even something that could go into committee, is to have, you know, the auditor appear before us, maybe put a motion on, and then maybe have a committee meeting or a committee.
But
of the
Mr.
whole.
Chairman, in all due respect to you, how can we move forward if we don't actually know what we're discussing on anything? Because we went from the police department to the next department, and we found the same type of stuff happen in the next department.
I understand
So
that,
I'm not sure
Counsel,
how we
but
move on at all.
We can only vote on what's in front of us. We don't know, like I said, to go through. So if there's specific things that you're looking for, if you think there's discrepancies and things like that, certainly you have the right to sit down with the auditor yourself, or you could have the auditor in front of
But
us.
I think the people at home want to know that the budget that is being presented to us, and again, I don't think that anything is being underhanded or done in a vicious manner. But what we're discussing and what we're representing to the people at home that are watching isn't accurate information. It's not what it actually is. So how can we say that we talked about a true budget when it's not a true budget?
All right, so what I would do then is, here's what I would make as a recommendation then, is to have, at the end of the budget, any questions dealing with this or any other thing on the last day on June 2nd, is to have the auditor come in front of us, have the questions prepared. He's gonna be here anyways, and maybe at that point, he'll have some information and other specific things. Like I said, because we're only voting on what's in front of us. We don't know what actually anybody gets. Like I said, sometimes there may be clerical errors on here and stuff like that, but the fact is
There
that,
can't be clerical errors, Mr. Chairman. It's a budget. It's what we're running.
I
When you make a budget for your house, you don't make clerical errors at your house on whether or not,
oh, I do, trust me.
and that's why I try not to laugh. But you don't necessarily, other than yourself, make clerical errors on how much you need every month to live
I
your life.
understand,
So I
Counsel.
think we need to adjourn tonight until we get this information.
No, I
Chairman, can I ask a
disagree.
question
Wait a second,
to you?
please. I disagree. I disagree with that. I certainly respect your opinion, but I disagree. What I would ask for you to do is questions that you have, or anybody else that may have here, is to submit them to Mr. Demus, okay? And he has a couple of weeks, okay? And please, before we do anything, the budget's finished. Remember, the budget is not done yet, okay? If there's anything specific that you want to know going through this budget book, any specific questions, we can have Mr. Demus before us on the last night, and certainly to the best of his ability, he can answer those questions based on what's in the budget
But
book.
Mr. Chairman, if that was a handful of questions, I would agree with you. If there was 3 or 4 questions and line items, I wouldn't even bring it back here. I would call Mr. Demus on the phone and we would discuss it and we would move on. There seems to be too many to be able to discuss them in one night.
I disagree, there's too many, like I said.
You disagree, Mr. Chairman. How can you disagree? I mean, we've looked at 2 departments and both departments have several questions. And again, it's not to any of these individuals who I consider to be friends up here. It's a clerical error that we need to make sure we're looking at accurate information.
I just want to point out, though, you're categorizing these as clerical errors, and they are not clerical errors. What was budgeted in FY16 was what was budgeted in FY16. What's being requested in FY17 is being based on what the mayor is requesting their salaries to be. Now, sometimes you talked about the budget process. The budget is exactly that. It is a budget. And a number of things change throughout the year. There are individuals that will come and go, and then you have positions that need to be filled. So sometimes those positions can't be filled based on that specific amount in which you had budgeted in the prior year. So it's a very fluid process. I'm not sure of all the changes that took place. I haven't been here during the entire process, but it is unfair to say that there are clerical errors that are causing your confusions as well as inaccurate information, because the information that's presented in front of you, I believe, is accurate. Now, you may have questions as to how much each individual is getting paid based upon what city council would have appropriated, authorized in the prior year. That's a legislative issue. As far as what is actually being paid, that came directly as an executive issue. I don't have the answers as to why, but to categorize that the numbers that you're seeing in front of you is inaccurate is not accurate.
Mr.
No,
Demus.
but Mr. Demus, in all
Counsel,
due respect,
Counsel,
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna end on
Mr.
this comment.
Counsel, please.
Through the chair, I'm gonna end on this comment because he made a recommendation. I'm gonna end on it. I have not accused anybody tonight of doing anything wrong. We have numbers in front of us that we believe we need to run the city of Everett with. I don't want to sit up here and cut somebody's salary or that may not be eligible to be cut. We were presented a budget. We were told this is what we need to run the city. But what we ran the city on last year is a different story. So it's not equaling apples to apples at this point from 2016 to 2017. To say that it's a clerical error, okay, it may or may not be, but there is some difference, a big difference here overall in the budget. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Before we move on, Mr. Demus, if you could, before the last meeting, could you provide all the members of the council with a salary structure, current salary structure for the different departments? So
I
we
would be
may-
happy to.
All right, thank you for that, I appreciate it. Councilor Hanlon, did you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We skipped over this very quickly, and I want to ask a question of the Director of Joint Committee. Is that the Joint Committee on Children's Health Care in Everett?
Yes.
That's the committee we're talking about?
Yes.
What happened to the director?
All right.
The director was Jack Coogan at one time, and then it went to another person. Who's the other person who took over that job? Wasn't it Jackie Coogan?
Jackie, yeah.
Jackie retired.
I
He
know,
hasn't been
yeah.
here.
and another person took it over.
Counsel,
Yes, that is
that-
correct.
I don't mean to interrupt, I apologize. That was asked earlier. Mr. Sapino did say that because there was some reorganization with the joint committee.
I heard him say that.
Yeah, so they no longer have that position, so that's why that position's not there anymore. And it happened to be, if it was Mrs. Coogan, that's why it's not there anymore.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
But they still have their office here?
Oh, yeah.
And who's
No,
in-
again, they're still working closely with us and us with, you know what I mean?
Who's
It's
in
just,
charge of the office?
what was in, Mike DeCastro.
Mike DeCastro is the president of the board.
You what?
He's the president of the board of directors for the joint committee.
President of the Board of Directors of the Joint Committee?
Mhm.
President so there's a board now?
There's been a board for the past 2 years there.
Yes, he's involved with East Boston Neighborhood Health Centers and stuff. Very, very qualified guy, very, very nice man.
So they still have their office downstairs? They're still
Yes.
Oh, yes.
operating as usual?
Mhm.
They're
I
not
asked.
going anywhere and nothing, you know what I mean? They just, to be honest with you, Councilman, they just wanted to reorganize
Good enough.
how they're gonna do
Okay,
it.
good enough.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor DePiero?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's been a while. Just a quick question. The staff members at the Wellness Center, are they reflected in this budget or are they reflected in a different department?
Different.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor McKinnon?
My questions are done. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Any recommendations at this time? Hearing none. Mr. Navarro?
Mr. Chairman, just on that, just pending what the outcome of Mr. Demus's
Oh, yes, we
reports
did,
are.
we did ask for the salary structure, and Mr. Demus
Thank you.
is going to be appearing here at the last meeting anyways, as well as the other meetings, and certainly if anybody has any follow-up questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for Mr. Navarro for appearing before us. Any monies being returned at all? I'm sorry, pages 49 to 62.
Very little.
$10?
Well, good evening, everyone.
Good evening. $10, $100, any?
There's a couple of accounts, probably about 5 to 10%, if that. Most of the other accounts will be depleted by the end of the fiscal year.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Counsel McKinnon?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Navarro, my sign.
Yes, I'll have that tomorrow for you.
Thank you. That's it.
Counselor.
Not pertaining to the budget.
Exactly.
Counsel Della Sola?
Good evening. Just a question about the part-time. Is this this isn't for the summer help, correct?
No.
What is that? Are we hiring?
The
part-time?
summer help, we get a grant. We get funded from District Gas, Exxon, et cetera.
And that's what it totals out to?
That's not even, I don't believe that's in this fund, right?
Where are you?
For
No.
the summer program.
No.
No.
Well, the part-time give, it was 0 last year, 27,000 this year.
Oh, I had one, there's one part-time clerk in the the front office of my building.
It also includes a part-time mechanic.
Correct.
So that's 27,000 for two hires?
19 hours each.
How many mechanics we have out there now?
I have 3 full-time, actually 4 full-time and 1 temp. And then the part-time mechanic.
Looking to hire that temp eventually?
He's under a 90-day temp trial basis right now, and I'll see how we evaluation at the end of the term.
Do we need a fourth one?
I believe so. We have 12 new vehicles, and we just have 12 new police vehicles, so yes, we need an additional one.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Hanlon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On City Service Commission stipend, it's $15,600. What exactly is that for?
Just 1 second.
It's City Service Commission.
It's for
The city, the commission,
It's the stipends for the commission.
Okay, how many members are there?
I believe it's 7.
7, and this is like their stipend for the year? Split this
Correct.
up 7 ways, so does the chairman get more?
The chairman gets more.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor De La
Okay, so
Sola.
the- I'm not finished, Mr.
Oh,
Chairman.
I'm sorry, I think you said thank
So the
you.
chairman gets 36, okay, and the commissioners get 2,000, is that what it is?
Correct.
Okay. And my other question was on vehicle maintenance, repair maintenance. What departments in the city do you do work for?
All vehicles,
All vehicles, not school department?
not school department.
Okay, but you do the,
ISD, police, the fire has their own mechanic who handles all the fire apparatus.
Okay.
And all the city vehicles for DPW.
okay, and you send any of that work out,
Some that are gonna take longer, yes, we send out.
like a transmission?
We sub it out.
Over the job, something like that?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Counselor De La Sola.
On the body repair, down the bottom, we have 6,000, looking for 70,000? 70,000 for auto body repair?
Yes, we're looking to repair and paint all the damaged vehicles. We're subbing that out.
Thank you. That's my little pet peeve with, I know we had that issue
Yes,
last year. The
correct.
vehicles were damaged and we're gonna get them repaired.
Correct.
And keep them clean.
Paint
Thank
them
you.
all red as well. All the vehicles are going red except for the water department will be white.
All the green.
All the
pickups,
forest
that's
green,
going red.
yes, all red.
And that being, is that gonna go to a contract or is that?
That's gonna go through a contract.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, page 50. Counselor Capone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you. I know that I missed the first meeting, but I watched it on the internet, so I got myself up to speed with the business manager leaving your department, and I guess it's being split between the auditor's department and the city solicitor's office. Dealing with contracts, what specifically would your department do with regards to contracts in the past?
Well, my department has most contracts within the city, and so she has to oversee them. I don't think my superintendents are savvy enough to handle that many contracts at once, along with all the daily operation.
Sure. In the past, and again, I'm trying to understand the different, because I know that we added on different positions and whatnot. In the past, has the executive director been doing contract, who was doing, was that solicitor's office?
That was a
Who handling everything?
combination of the supers, the director, but I think
Okay.
the director's been inundated. I tried to do it myself, but it was a little bit too much, too many balls up in the air to juggle.
Okay, all right. To what extent is the DPW involved directly with contracts? Or is it just, this has to get done, these folks will take care of it, and then you just implement it?
We work hand in hand with the executive directors.
Okay, thank you.
All set, Counselor?
Thank you.
Any other Questions? Seeing none, page 51. Oh, I'm sorry, Counselor Napolitano.
Thank you. I do apologize. I had to step back for a moment. You mentioned there was 2 part-time positions? I'm looking at for the motor equipment repairman part-time, that's 27,205. Where is the funding for the other part-time position? You said there was a part-time.
I'm sorry, the other one is the water, I'm sorry.
It's underwater?
Yes.
Okay, so it's on a different page.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Page 51. Seeing none. Page 52. Counsel DePiero.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the new carpenter position, in the past, was that previously done by regular DPW employees that were just being worked more and not compensated for it?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And we put it in the past budgets, but we haven't filled it.
In the general maintenance positions, those are building custodial staff and so on?
Correct.
Thank you.
All set, Counsel? Thank you. Any other questions? Counsel Hanlon.
Quick question. You said I think you said the new appointment, auto repair mechanic, general maintenance, that's not all. Is that automobile repair?
Yes.
All set, Counsel? Yep. Thank you. On to page 53. Counsel Capone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I noticed that we have a line here for office equipment for 10,000. What particular items are we looking at?
The everyday use, I think we
Oh,
had,
okay, nothing
we had,
specific.
I think, 2,000?
It's actually, this particular office equipment line item is for a large printer to print
Okay.
large documents. We have a very old one, it's not reliable, needs to be replaced.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other
Any
questions.
other questions? Seeing none, page 54. Any questions? Seeing none, page 55. Any questions? Seeing none, page 56. Any questions? Seeing none, page 57, please. Counsel Napolitano.
I do apologize. If we could go back to page 55, indulge me for a
Page
moment.
55, please.
Glenwood Cemetery expenses. Is there any plans to, I mean, this just came to me because I've actually, it's been on my mind for a while. Is there any plans to repair or replace or upgrade the sign at the entrance of Sergeant Street coming from Revere? When you drive out there and you're facing Glenwood, sir, that is the most raggedy-looking sign I've ever seen.
I agree. We have a complete redesign in community development.
When will that be installed?
I'm hoping it's going to be acting in the next 6 months to a year.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Back to page 57. No questions there. We'll move on to page 58. Page 58. Any questions? Oh, Counsel Napolitano.
Okay. City services, repair, maintenance, police department repair, gas, where are these items carried now? They're all zeroed out for 2017.
What number is it?
490, yeah.
They're all under 490.
Which is back on page 49, I believe.
We did some switching around in departments, the accounts. It's the fleet department.
Page 49.
Just want to compare the numbers, if I could, please.
Take your time.
Thank you. Tires and tire supplies went up from 19,000 to 45,000?
Correct.
How?
We had a lot of damaged rims and tires for the last 2 years. And with the replacement of all the new vehicles as well. It's been under budgeted for the last, I don't know how many years, along with the motor vehicle inspections as well. Totally underfunded.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Capone.
On page 58, with the expenses, construction repairs, see last year was budgeted for 75. We're budgeting for 125 this year. What kind of items are we talking about in that area?
Sidewalk repairs, potholes, daily maintenance.
Plenty of those.
Plenty of those.
No shortage.
I know them on Cottage Street as well.
There's no shortage. Little further down on street cleaning supplies. He's on it. He's on it. He's got it. Street cleaning supplies. I think that last year it was there was no budget because I think we ended up.
We
subbing
subbed it
that
out.
Yeah.
We purchased one last year, and we're looking actually to purchase another one this year and phase out the subcontractor.
Okay, because I know that there are different events that we have.
Yes.
That we need to jump on the spot and take care of.
Correct.
it,
I mean,
so-
ideally, we'd like to have 3 on hand, 2 to do the routes, and then 1 extra.
Okay. I have no other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other questions on 58? Not, we'll go to page 59. Seeing no questions on there, page 60. Counsel Della Sola.
No, I'm halfway down the page. You get the Craftsman. On the Craftsman, you got 1, 2, 3, 4 positions. Is that part of the reconstruction of?
Yes, we tried to allocate the same number of employees for each clerk to make it evened off. So we had some movement.
So there's actually 5, correct?
Correct.
5 positions. Actually, yeah, 5. And you added 1 up on, so you minus 5 and you shifted 1 over, is that what happened?
Correct. It was just much easier tracking for the clerks for the budget.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Seeing no other questions on page 60, 61? Seeing no, Counselor Hanlon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there any way that we can get a one-line total for page 49 through 61?
Yes.
Do you have it available?
Not right now, but we'll be able to pull that together for you.
I can add that tonight if I have to, but just those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 totals.
Counsel, we can request that if you want before the next meeting.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Della Sola.
I just got a question. I don't know if I'm missing something here. Are you looking to get new vehicles this year coming up?
A few of them.
Is that on here? I just didn't see it.
No.
Is it part of the capital improvement?
Capital improvement.
Part of capital? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions on 61? No, 62. Oh, I'm sorry, Peter. Counselor Napolitano.
Thank you. But shouldn't the expenditures for the equipment still be on this budget? If we're approving a capital improvement, it's still for fiscal 16 to 17, correct?
Yes, it is.
So shouldn't the expenditure still appear under the department? Why would it appear separately?
I'd be happy to take a look at where your 16 appropriations were. If items in your FY16 CIP were funded out of the operating budget, you would see them here. If they were approved or funded outside of your operating, if they were bonded, then they're typically reported in the capital project fund.
Okay.
So they'd be outside of the operating.
It's how it's funded.
It's how it's funded as to where the expenditures fall.
All right, if you could, I'd really
Sure.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Page 62, any questions?
Would you be excused?
Not, thank you for appearing, Mr. Navarro.
Thank you. Have a good
Any
night.
recommendations at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on. Council Napolitano, just so you know, that, I believe the next one we have, that cap improvement, I think that's on the agenda for the next.
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. If we could have Mr. Souza in front of us, pages 66, 67, Planning and Development. Sorry for the delay.
Good evening.
Good evening. Any monies being returned, Mr. Souza?
There is some money, approximately 40,000 from salaries, and that was just a period of transition from vacancy with our senior planner.
Also, I just want to make sure you weren't giving any personal money back out of your thing back to the city, right? It's a joke.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right, thank you. Councilor
Thank you.
Capone. 66 and 7, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Mr. Souza. Looking at professional services, I know that
Yes.
we've got a lot going on.
Absolutely.
And we're jumping from 100 from last year's budget to 550.
Sure.
If you could just speak to the types of projects we're looking at?
Absolutely, absolutely. So with respect to professional services, and I've provided a little supplement, just to make it easier. What I'm referencing is the last page of the supplement that I provided. It should be on your desk, but I will go through the rationale for the increase in professional services. There's actually 12 different areas that I am looking at to explore, and basically looking at funding for appraisal work. We've done some appraisals in the past, and the appraisal work itself, not only for property for public purposes, but also for easements and things of that nature. Some funding for legal work also, relative to different zoning matters that have come up with our planning board and also within our department. We're in the process of updating some low-hanging fruit, if you will, in our zoning ordinance, and we're looking for some funding to that. Also, training for our boards and commissions. At the last meeting, I watched it as well, and there was reference to the importance of training our board members and our commissioners. With respect to that, my Planning Board Conservation Commission, looking at providing them with the necessary training and support that they need to help them with applications that certainly that come in, and look at best practices and sort of trends and legal issues that are going on throughout the state, and how those matters would impact our community. Another big item is housing consultant, and that is in essence one of the things that certainly the mayor has talked about, and this council has talked about, is the importance of increasing affordable housing and inclusionary zoning. I am respectfully requesting, and in this breakdown, I've estimated about $50,000 specifically for a housing consultant to assist with the implementation of inclusionary zoning. We have not adopted that yet. We are working on a draft within my department. I would like to, the importance of the inclusionary zoning ordinance, putting something in place for developers, a requirement, if you will, X number of units to be deemed affordable. Well, there's a certification process that needs to occur with the state. And in order to ensure that runs smoothly, to complement my staff, they do a tremendous job on housing rehab and on the housing front. But a consultant, we do believe, is warranted to help us, not only us, but also the developers in the process with state certification and so on. A housing trust fund is something you'd also see in inclusionary zoning ordinance as well. And the administration of that, again, to advance more affordable housing units in the city. It's important to, we believe, to have the consultants to support us with that. Updating our subsidized housing inventory as well, long overdue, getting us to that 10% of affordable units, things of that nature. That's what's going through my mind when I think of professional service under the housing front. And also on relative to housing, looking at, which some of you have mentioned in the past, the need for conversions of second and third stories. Everett Square, Glendale Square, and so on. Certainly in conversations internally and with my counterpart over at ISD, a housing consultant would help us identify strategies, but also to talk with business owners, property owners, about maybe best ways to assist with redevelopment of that. Somewhat big picture, but very important picture that I see that's eminent in certain respect in a good way because of the, we talk about development pressure, but also development pressure, we have to have support for development to assist. And these are items that I see are important. Also make reference in there, approximately in my experience, the importance of a neighborhood master plan. In this case, we've done work at the Commercial Triangle, Revere Beach Parkway. That was funded through CDBG funds. And we were fortunate leveraging funds to get other funds. We spent through our community development block grant last year, the year prior, about $90,000, $95,000 for a neighborhood master plan. That neighborhood master plan for the Commercial Triangle area has recommendations certainly for zoning, but when I talk about a neighborhood master plan, I also see it as a economic development plan in a way. Property owners, other developers want to see, well, what's the vision for this area? If there's these certain uses here, what does the community want to see? What do they want to see? So this year, we looked at Lower Broadway prior to me coming on board. We're implementing the fruits of that master plan. We've finished the Commercial Triangle. We're able to secure EPA funding, which I'm very excited about, for brownfields assessments, which was something that came out of that Commercial Triangle master plan, talking to property owners, the need for remediation. For example, the Market Forge site is one that jumps up to mind. Getting assistance for that. We were able to secure last week $200,000 in EPA funds, and I think in part thanks to the planning exercise of the neighborhood master plan down at the Commercial Triangle. This one would be for the area of Santilli, Air Force Road, Norman Street. There's lots of great stuff that's happening there organically, and we want to keep that going, and we want to find the right harmonious balance between the developments that are there, potentially prospective developments on the commercial industrial side and also the residential side. So I think that's a very important exercise as well to engage in. There was a reference just earlier, and it hasn't escaped us, the need for our plaques, dedications, memorials, upgrading. Talked about the signage at the cemetery, asking for a small amount under professional services of about $10,000, so we can address those elements, somewhat beautification, if you will. Architectural engineering services. I'll give you a great example of where we could use funding. The opening of Prescott Street, the assessment of how to open that, and looking at engineering and architectural testing, borings, things of that nature. Well, all that costs money, and if that is the desire of the council, certainly to look at, certainly we need that money and get the experts on board to assist us, to assist my department and also my counterpart in engineering as well. Other item is the the federal and state services that we have used. It's been the traditional item, I think, last 3 years, is for government relations services. In this case, the city was under a contract with a firm called O'Neill & Associates. Their contract expires at the end of next month. They are a government relations firm that has assisted us in the past and currently. In my bubble, particularly with navigating and assistance with the folks at EPA, relative to this grant that we just received, but also this other issue of what's called MS4 permits that my counterpart in engineering could explain much better than I could, but they do provide us the assistance, and got to give credit where credit's due. At the state level, certainly our counterparts in the state delegation do a tremendous job, but also in the federal level, we do need help navigating through the certain state agencies. For example, FEMA is another example that we want to use the expertise of a firm such as O'Neill & Associates. I pause to say that my recommendation for next year would be to put a proposal out there to look at other firms as well that could also compete. I'm not looking years past. The contract itself, I believe, was $90,000 each year, and I'm looking at my recommendation is to have a much more targeted approach, much more narrow. So let's look at the two big issues that we could use federal help with, and in my mind, it's looking at FEMA assistance and FEMA funds for the culvert project, And I think there would be some benefit for that. Last two things going through on this list here. Historical property surveys, long overdue in our city, and the reason for that, the reason why I say that, the importance of identifying our historical properties, also assist developers, and again, in Everett Square and Glendale Square, to tap into historical tax credits. City of Malden has been very successful with 2 projects this year. They got awarded, developers have received award for historical tax credits. In order to be eligible to apply for those, you have to have a historical property survey in place. I think it's also an important item because with our Historic Commission, I think coming full speed, and also just with the efforts of thinking, for example, upcoming our 125th anniversary and so on, it's something to think about our community from the historic perspective, because I see the benefits of the grant opportunities through MHC, the Mass Historic Commission, where we can leverage reimbursement funds for this survey work. And after a year, we can also go after funds for maybe certain historic public buildings and so on through MHC. But also from a developer or property owner side, they could tap into the historical tax credits, which, to my knowledge, it's been in existence for the last 10 years. It's not something that we've really been able to explore, and I'd like to give that opportunity. Now, that's not today or tomorrow, but we have to do the legwork here on this item. Also, some money for translation services. Marzi Glasgow in our office does a tremendous amount of work, as we all know, with small business development and the importance of translating our documents, our application forms, and also the outreach components that we do in the neighborhood master plan and the other activities that we've done. I'm thinking about the housing production plan. It would be great to have more resources to do outreach in translation services to our entire community. So, I do apologize for that long breakdown, but it is important, and I just wanted to justify that.
Yeah, absolutely. And with regards to the inclusionary zoning, I know that this is something that the mayor's spoken about recently. It's something that you and I had spoken about prior to that.
Yes.
And I've spoken to your predecessor about it. So it's something that concerns me that we really need to get up to speed with the mandated state.
Yes.
Because it puts too much of a burden on the rest of the housing market, especially where we have so much new growth coming in.
Sure.
Where are we at with regards to, and it's not an easy topic, so that's not a criticism by any means. It's complicated, involved stuff.
Mhm.
Where are we along the curve with actually getting something together to implement it? Do you know?
In terms of inclusionary zoning?
Yeah.
So right now, we're at the end of May, so hopefully in the next few weeks.
Okay.
I-
Are we that close to introducing something?
I would like to get a draft out
Okay.
for this group to review
Wonderful.
and consider.
Yeah, it's something we need to jump on.
Absolutely,
It's
absolutely.
been hanging out there on us for a while. We've been lucky we haven't gotten hit with it, but it's
Absolutely.
only a matter of time.
And
So, I do
absolutely,
appreciate it.
absolutely.
Thank you. I do appreciate it.
And we do have to be making incremental progress. Our housing production plan identifies the need for a housing consultant. If we make incremental progress at our 10%, it helps us.
Good.
It
Excellent.
does.
Thank you so much. I do
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Thank you,
Mr.
Counselor.
Chairman.
Councilman McLaughlin?
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
For Mr. Souza. One is senior planner.
Yes.
2016, it's appropriated for $52,500. 2017, it's appropriated, it's requested for $48,750. Did somebody get a pay reduction? Because I know everybody in your department does a good job.
No, thank you for the question. And you'll notice with senior planner, my position as well, the executive city planner, the deputy director, the housing specialist, those are funded through, partially funded also through CDBG and also the home program. So, so you'll see under notes to budget, for example, our senior planner, the annual salary is listed at $65,000. Of that $65,000, I believe it's approximately 25% is funded through CDBG.
Okay.
And that is our community development block grant. And the 75 is funded, or the 80 is funded by the city.
So, this is a unique situation, I guess, but.
It is.
So, your salary person, I
Sure.
guess, or senior clerk, we appropriated last year $67,500.
Correct.
For your salary.
Correct.
The CDBG grant
Yes.
paid 22,500 of the 67,500.
No, it's actually, so the city, the city paid 67,500.
Additional to
In
the
addition,
22.
and then 22,500 came from CDBG, so that put us at 90,000 for the director's position.
So your, again, I'm sorry to ask, but your salary is 90,000?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so same thing.
This year.
So same thing with the senior planner. The senior planner is 52,500 plus the 17,500
Correct, again, for FY16 appropriation.
appropriation.
Mhm.
So then why is the number lower this year at 48,750 and lower on the, I guess we can't control grant funding, but
Sure.
it's lower on the grant funding by small change, but there's a difference between our portion of the senior planner's salary.
Mhm. And so with respect to that, and I will go back and also, also with the auditor as well, the position itself, it is at 65,000. And I will make certain that the balance between the position, it would look to me that that would be less than 75%. So I'll make sure that we have that adjusted correctly.
Which
But
is
at the
fine,
end of the
we-
day, it's 65,000.
So what is 65,000?
The salary of the senior planner.
So instead of 48,000, it should be 65,000?
It should be 48,750 as shown on here that the
Yep.
city would pay, and then we would add from the grant itself 16,250.
But why is there a difference of about $4,000 again? Here comes the
We'll cover that in the
$4,000.
schedule that we
Yeah.
provide. I see exactly the question that you're asking.
Okay.
So I'm not sure where that FY16 appropriation number's coming from. The FY17 is what they're making plus a requested 2%. I'll make sure that we include these positions in the information you're looking for.
Say something.
But,
It was.
Counselor Hurd?
Sure, Mrs. Earl, absolutely.
It was a vacancy, so it was budgeted at a higher amount. When the person came in, they were
You're correct.
not getting the high end of the salary, they were getting a lower end. So
And
that's the
who
difference.
was the vacancy and who was the fulfilled? Because I
Sure.
wasn't here last year. to be
Sure.
honest. I spent a lot of time in the hospital. I
So-
don't remember there being.
Sure, so I was the former senior planner, and at that time, it was roughly about 58,000. When I worked on the budget for last year, now I recall, we put that position at 70,000, and the person was hired this year at 65,000.
So who was hired? Who's now the senior planner?
Michael Vivaldi, he's our senior planner.
Okay, so he came in at a $5,000 pay of less than what you were earning in the same position. Is that accurate information?
No, so he came in at 65,000. When I left senior planner, it was at 58.
I thought you just said it was at 70. I apologize.
No, I was not at 70, but I budgeted at that time for 70,000. So in order to get a pool of applicants, when we put it out for.
So you
for-
budgeted for 70, you were
Mhm.
at 57?
I was at 58.
58.
At the time.
So this practice has been happening then? It's not just this year that this practice is happening, where we're appropriating money for positions and then we're going out and somebody is given whatever they deem necessary for that salary. If we appropriated 70 for that position and then only paid 58, again, here we go with the same situational formula or however this is working out.
Mm.
Somebody is making sense of this, I'm not.
Okay.
But it was done in previous years as well, so there's a history of this repeating itself. And I'm just trying to figure out why and how we rectify this from going forward.
Okay.
But Mr. Demus, I know, is going to answer the question in
Mhm.
another meeting for me, so I'm not going to beat it to the ground. But again, it's a question. But I have one last question.
Sure.
Tony. Where does O'Neill and Associates appear in your budget? Because when I spoke with the mayor here at the budget meeting, he told me that O'Neill and Associates appeared in your
Yes.
department.
They would fall under the professional services.
Okay, professional services. And their contract is $90,000?
Their contract, which expires at the end of June, yes, their contract's at 90,000.
Okay.
And they're under a 3-year contract.
I have to make a statement, and I apologize to my colleagues. We all know our senator. We all know our state representative. We all know that they're doing great work at the State House on behalf of the residents of Everett. We know our congressman. He's also fighting hard for the city of Everett and is very tuned to the community. I cannot figure out why we need O'Neill and Associates, we need a policy director, we need a grant writer to do the job that the senator and representative are doing on a daily basis. We might as well tell the senator to stay home and have a vacation next year because we have more money being spent to do his job than what he's getting. He might as well come work for the city of Everett and do
Council,
the
I
same
don't mean to
job.
interrupt you, but
It's okay.
you know, but I'm saying is, there are other things that were explain, that there are other things, there are grants and certain
The
things.
O'Neill and Associates is a lobbyist that are working to lobby the senator and the representative to bring
Correct.
money home for the city of Everett.
All right, but there
I
might
think
be
it's
certain
ludicrous,
things.
and I don't appreciate you interrupting me, Mr.
Sir,
Chairman.
I appreciate it, like I said, first of all, I'm not giving you a wide leadway, okay?
I don't think you are. I'm talking about it.
No.
I'm talking about professional
And
services, and I'm talking about something that I spoke with the mayor about. This wasn't a hidden secret. I spoke to the mayor about this, and he said, when it comes before the planning, speak to them about it. That's what he told me last week, sitting in the same chair that Mr. Souza's sitting in tonight. So it's not a secret to anybody. It's not a secret that we have lobbyists lobbying our senator to do work and our representative to do work that they're already existingly doing for the city of Everett.
Okay.
It's redundant that we have this many amount of people working to advocate that the senator does a better job for the city of Everett. I don't think there's a possibility that our senator or representative or congressman could do a better job for the city of Everett. So I'm going to make a recommendation tonight of a cut because I don't think that we need all these people asking our senator to do the job that he's been doing for the past 6 years, which I believe all of us are pretty happy with his performance because he's unopposed for
Very well.
again.
Thank you. Council McKinnon.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Souza. First of all, Mr. Souza, thank you for putting this memorandum together. It's very professional, and I think we just received it tonight, so I wanted to see if we could actually take a look at it. If we have any other questions on this, we'd like to bring it forward, if in fact we're going to do some cutting and stuff like that. But I wanted to say thank you. In regards to grants and grant writing?
Yes.
We, as was mentioned by my colleague, there's positions that seem to be like crossover positions. Does our grant writer here, does she actually do grant writing for you and your department as well?
I'm sorry, and I apologize. Our grant writer, who would that?
Catherine Rollins?
So she serves as our policy director.
Okay, but we're planning on making a grant writer, and then we're planning on doing other things. That's why I wanted to see if she is involved with your department as well.
Yes.
I wanted to see the validity behind putting such a position entitled to someone at this point. Is it needed?
There is a tremendous amount of value for a grant writer.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
There really is.
I'm trying to yank this out of you, but go ahead.
No, there is a tremendous amount of value for a grant writer on board for the city. Look, we apply for grants in my department, and other departments also apply for grants. It's not just planning development. You heard about the SAFE grant and other grants that departments get. I think the value of a grant writer, although it's not coming through my department, but since you asked the question, I think there is value for the city. I used to, way back when, used to work, I did an internship in a grant writer's office in a gateway city just like this, and I saw the benefit. And I do believe it pays for itself. Likewise, the same thing, within our own department, we administer a CDBG grant, and we go out and look for grants as well. But there are times where we can't go after all the grants, and you do the best you can. And so that added support, I think, goes a long way. I did provide in 2016 the grants that, from our bubble, we worked on.
So you provided them, correct?
Through my department collaboration, also with the mayor's office, and with Catherine, certainly,
So
for
you
support and
utilize-
coordination.
Co-intertwined?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
So it's fair enough to say that that position there that we're looking at would be a needed position?
I think there's a tremendous amount of value, yes.
And actually that person does intertwine with your projects that you're doing? grant
Absolutely,
writing?
absolutely. And I can see that position also, not only for my department, for the other departments as well. And that's why it's up in the mayor's office.
They'll be free to actually do as many grants as they choose to for different various.
I hope so.
departments and stuff like that. Okay.
I hope so.
I just, because what I wanted to touch on it, because I can hear chatter if it's, relevant or not. I think it's very relevant, because you have it here on your memorandum, 2016 grant received. I figured that we should know the fact that there is people that are actually doing this and working to get these type of grants to save the city and money, funding, and we can actually start working on these different projects that needs to move this city forward.
Absolutely, and there's two things, you secure the grants, but also administering the grants, and there are.
Caretaker of the grant, because you have to do a certain amount of work on a certain amount of time, at a certain individual time.
Correct.
Per
Correct.
grant.
Correct.
I know I've
Correct.
been through that
You understand
process.
it, yes.
So
Yes.
I just wanted to get that clear. Thank you very much.
So thank you for the question,
Thank
I
you.
do appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to straighten something out, that we do have a great senator, a great representative, and a great congressman. They do a great job, but they don't write grants. I'm getting to the question. Please stop interrupting me. You don't interrupt anybody else in here.
Counsel, first of all, that's absolutely not, because I've done it too, several times. I've done it to Counsel Hanlon, I've done it to Counsel McLaughlin tonight. What I'm saying is, if it pertains to the budget.
Well, let me get to the,
All right, it's not, it can't be a statement or just a general statement.
I'm not doing a statement.
All right.
I'm getting to the question. So the question is, what I'm saying is, the senator, the congressman, and the state rep do not write grants for us. We have to write the grant, and they fight to get the grant for us. So we do need a grant director. We do need a grant writer. That's very, we need it. So that's my point I'm trying to say is, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong. We have the grant director that writes the grant. She goes after all the grants out there. We get this grant, we bring it to we have the senator, the state rep, and the congressman fight for us to get that grant. Is that correct to say?
That's correct to say. They've been supportive of all the
Okay.
applications.
If we didn't have the grant director, would the senator, the congressman, or the state rep write the grant for us?
To answer
I don't know
the,
what we need. The representative,
I apologize, I've lost.
no,
I've
I
lost track.
apologize, because the interruption is ridiculous, that I can't even ask a question tonight. I don't know what it is, this
Counsel.
budget hearing. The question I'm asking, if we don't write these grants, out of all the grants we have written, okay, the grant writer last year got over $3 million, is that correct to say?
It is.
Okay. If we didn't have the grant writer to do this, would the congressman, the senator, bring us $3 million in grants?
So the role of the congressman, and I respect the question, the role of the congressman, the senator, the state representative, is certainly to advocate for us, and they've done a tremendous job. Yesterday, when I was here, the reimbursements that we got were thanks to our state senator and our state representative. The city certainly has a responsibility at its end to make its application and to prepare the documents in a grant application, show the need, show the cause, show the project, and they support us in that. They've been extremely supportive in that endeavor. With respect to the government relations aspect and others, it's also beyond grants. There's a policy element, and that's why we talk about grant writer, but the director of policy in the mayor's office, and also with the firm, the lobbying firm, the government relations firm, they also help us, and it's an approach between the city and also the additional help to navigate through. For example, one of the things we'd like to focus on, and I said earlier, was FEMA to help us through the process, and EPA, if we have challenges, potential grant opportunities, but also beyond that, certain policy things that may impact the city. It's good to have some assistance and some guidance to that, and that's where we see the benefit of either a firm and also working collaboration with the policy director, or working collaboration with the federal and state delegations, so on. By no means is there any disrespect or anything like that, because everybody has been extremely supportive, and this gives us the added capacity to do more and to assist the city when there are challenges, policy questions that come up, when there are grant opportunities that come up. These are all integral components that help us get to where we want to go, really.
Okay. The other question is, you have $65,000 for a landscape architect?
Yes.
Now, in this this is the sheet that you gave us tonight.
Yes.
It says the cost savings option to reduce operational costs. City spends $150,000 per year presently.
Sure.
So so that $150,000 is taken out of the city budget?
So that city spends $150,000 per year in landscaping services in our parks, in our open spaces, in our cemetery, and so on. The conversations that we have had internally in my office and also in collaboration with the director at DPW and the mayor's offices to look at ways that we can sort of improve the operations year to year, and the operational costs of landscaping and maintenance and so on. The element of a landscape architect, services a landscape architect, or call it landscape designer, however you wish, would be, as I listed here, develop priorities such as develop priorities of the planting lists, spring, summer versus fall, winter, identify cost options to reduce operational costs, because we do spend a tremendous amount of money and well-spent money, but we also, in terms of landscaping and in terms of general maintenance and so on, we want to make sure that we maintain all throughout the year, and that we have, for example, plantings that are done in the spring and in the summer. You want to continue and have the benefit of those in the fall and the winter, so that way it's aesthetic, and it's also an enhancement to our parks, our cemeteries, and our islands and so on in the city. So it's not a position. It is under professional services, and it's to assist certainly my department and certainly with DPW in trying to streamline those costs that we spend in landscaping. I don't anticipate that this would be a yearly item.
We're gonna pay this architect $65,000, and then the city's gonna save $150,000.
Well, we'll obviously we'll have to spend money in plantings and so on, but the $150,000, the idea is that would be reduced, because then we would be better spending our funds in the different plantings and also in the maintenance costs, because we do spend a lot of upfront in the spring. I'm not an expert in plants, so I'm struggling here. But in the spring flowers and so on, that certainly, they simply put, they don't last through the winter, of course. And if we're investing in beautiful landscaping, why don't we make the investment also in winterscapes as well, and also throughout the full year. So do think that there is merit to that.
I correct myself, we're saving $85,000.
So likewise,
Deduct the 65.
likewise in our parks. Look, we're doing park designs. We have 4 park projects under construction now. We do hire engineer, and they hire landscape architect as well to look at the trees, to look at the flowers, the planting beds, and so on. Do believe that if we set a standard, if we standardize that, there's going to be benefit, as opposed to us paying. We spend in engineering, and this would come up in the CIP process, but off the top of my head, we spend, depending on the park, but in engineering and architectural service, anywhere from, I'd say $85,000 to $150,000 on each park. I do believe this would help us save some costs there. So, I know when you look at landscape architect, and that's why I have this breakdown, it does need some explaining, so I hope I did justice.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Counsel DePiero? Counsel Hanlon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick question on
Yes.
We have appropriated in 2016 $355,000, and 17 $365,000. And of those positions,
Yes.
5 of them are going to get additional grant monies of $187,534. My question is, how long does that grant money keep coming in?
Sure. Thank you for the question. So Community Development Block Grant, we are a mini entitlement community. We receive grant funding every year, provided that grant administration and all of the documentation and so on is in good order. We've been successful for many years. It is not a competitive grant. It is an entitlement grant, and we've been very successful. So I'm not concerned.
All of these 5 are going to continue along?
Yes, and
this approximate amount of money?
Yes,
Plus whatever may come up.
and also, yes, and also to that end as well, the CDBG funding for mini entitlement communities, I was at a briefing yesterday. It's fortunately, thanks to our state delegation and federal delegation, it's been stable, and we've been really lucky. We've been really lucky with that. So likewise, the home program, which I should mention in here, because it's also the home program that's administered through our partners at the Malden Redevelopment Authority, and that's through other funds, that's through HUD funds. And likewise, it's been stable in the admin funding, so we've been very, very gracious for that. So. Grateful
set,
for that, I
Counsel.
should say.
Thank you, Counselor Hammond. Any questions on page 66 or 67?
Second.
Thank you for appearing.
Thank you.
Any recommendations? Seeing none. Mr. Sofa, thank you for your patience. Pages 43, 44, 45, and 46. Mr. Soper, any money being returned?
Thank you, Chairman. There will be money returned on line software under expenses. The $30,000 it's there was appropriated for new Viewpoint software, which came in about the first week of May. Okay, so we're going to get 2 months out of their annual, out of that $3,000. So, you know, if I was to project, we'd probably end up sending back maybe 24, 25, depending on our usage over the next 2 months of their software.
Thank you very much. Counsel Capone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Mr. Soper. Good evening. It's been a long evening, I'm sorry. On this front page now, with the software that you just mentioned, are you talking about from last year or the software appropriation that's here before us this evening?
That's the appropriation that would be here for last, well, actually, so,
Sure it's not under contract services?
no. Well, there is some, would be other equipment maintenance was actually, I believe, where it was. Let me just see. No, contract services is a total different line item. It was under, we've expended our current budget out of equipment maintenance for our software GeoTMS, which we've used for permitting and code enforcement for the majority of the year. We're still going to be using that software. So I will say we will expend all that money that's in that budget, but I see that there is no line item for software appropriated in 2015-16. So I'm a little confused about that.
Yeah, I am too. I don't know if it was, maybe it was a capital, maybe it was under capital improvement, I don't know. But, all right, so that's the Geo software you're talking about, it's the $30,000 for this year?
The $30,000 for this year that I have, but that I'm looking at that number. I know it's in the 2017 column, but that was for Viewpoint this year coming up forward, 30,017.
Okay.
The software line is a new account that's included in this year's budget.
Okay, all right. And yeah, professional development is self-explanatory. It's always good to invest in new people. The big one that we're all looking at here is contract services, where it was $30,000 last year, and this year it's just shy of $1.4 million. I'm assuming a lot of that has to do with the big things that are going on in the community. But if you could just speak to that, I'd
Yes,
appreciate
this
it.
is the amount that we've negotiated with Full Leaf Consulting. They are providing for all the plan review, inspections, and permitting for the site at the casino. So everything is being, the majority of the inspections are being consulted out with Full Leaf. That number is a recent number that's been put on a contract and has been recently put into the budget for the 2017. Now, we'll have 2018 and 2019 as well going forward. But there's only a one-year contract right now with Full Leaf.
Okay, and these are all reimbursed?
And these are all reimbursed, along with, well, we'll get to the, I guess, the salaries at another time on next page, but
Great.
there's some
Thank you
more
very much.
stuff.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor McKinnon?
You're right.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Soper. Mr. Soper, I'll get into salaries now. Are you anticipating more hirees, or?
Yes.
How many positions and what are they?
So we've got 5 positions total. 2 of the positions will be funded by the casino. One is a plumbing inspector and one is an electrical inspector. So under the current law in the state of Massachusetts, we are not allowed, and we met with our attorneys, Copman and Page, with the Department of Public Licensure when we talked about what we could and couldn't do. But apparently, state law requires that all plumbing inspectors and all electrical inspectors are to be hired and appointed by the city in which they're working in. So that puts them into my budget. But we've negotiated with the contractor, Wind Development, to fund those positions. So they understand that those 2 positions would be designated to that site. I don't anticipating needing them in the first or maybe second quarter of the year at this point.
Would
But
we be able to utilize them throughout the city?
the idea is that I'm going to say that is not negotiated with any contract at this point, but working with people, as I've done in the past, there will be times, I believe, that I can use those people when we have a shortage of supply in our own. Right now, we have a 17-hour plumbing inspector 2 days a week. For instance, if we needed someone on a Friday afternoon when our plumbing inspector isn't available, I think I could be able to get that trade-off with Wind Development. We're working with them in other aspects, so we'll have a good working relationship. So I think there'll be a little bit of give and take on that.
And they'll be funded by Wind Project?
Yes, yes, the casino.
No city funds?
No city funds.
And that's for those 2, now there's 3
Yes.
additional positions?
So the
you're
3
looking for?
additional positions are for code enforcement officers. So, the mayor came up with a great idea. I endorse this idea wholly, and what we'd like to do is designate a code enforcement officer to each ward, so that it would be in a position where we could, we'd have a designated officer, we could promote enforcement accountability. So if that officer is in that area and something isn't right, we can talk to that officer about doing that right. Right now, we're kind of roaming around the city and everybody can go like that. So we can kind of manage this a little bit better if we can work this out. It promotes accountability. We have a presence in the ward that we really don't have now, and that makes people, they get familiar with each other. So the homeowners get to know these guys, so maybe some complaints that we weren't getting, we can get now. We'll be familiar with the business people who are in those areas, and we can service them, and we can enforce upon them if we have to, or just advise and educate. Because my department should start out with education on this first. So we need to have those type of relationships in which we can educate people, not a distrusting, relationship. So I think this will work out. Now, we might rotate these guys through wards in the future, so that there's not too much familiarity, but this provides, I think it's a benefit for the counselors of wards, because now you have almost a direct contact person. If you have a situation, you'll get better response times. We'll know what people are and are not doing. So, a little bit of funding here for the additional staff, I think I can use that to improve the quality of life. We've been putting together some programs that we have now. We have a safe structure initiative in which we're going out and looking at fire escapes. We're looking at all wooden egresses. We have a thing called the Ugly House Program, in which we've got 132 letters that went out to homeowners who have paint peeling, roofs, shingles falling off the house, and we've had almost 20 of them come to the point where they've painted or sided their houses, and this is in the last just 6 months. Intense effort by pretty much one individual to send the letters out and educate and encourage people to do what they need to do. Send the people to the planning department to get the funds if they need the funds in that manner. So I'm encouraged by that program, and I think we can do a better job at it. We're not looking to hurt anybody. We play fair with everybody who is in a bind, but it's important to the neighborhoods and the quality of life and the pride and cleanliness. This all adds up. So every little bit I can do more you know, I think it's appreciated by the citizens.
Mr. Sorbo, will one of these individuals be an administrator?
One of these I'll probably elevate someone from my department now to be administrator who's, you know, warranted, and then backfill that ward position with a newer person who would come in.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Napolitano?
I'm all set, thank you.
All right. Counselor McLaughlin?
Couple of quick clarifications, not real questions, but radio maintenance, we appropriate 8,000. To date, we spent $486.
Right, so typically on my radio maintenance, what I do is at the end of the year, which is getting to be the time at the end of the year, we go into the storage room where we keep our light bulbs, our relays, our posts. You know, just a post is $10,000 if we wanted to buy one post. So these are the things that we go in at the end of the year. If we didn't have an emergency during the year in which we had to take all this money and fix something because somebody knocked someone over and we don't have the money because they're uninsured or they're underinsured. So I wait till we have that problem, and when we don't have that problem, I say, let's fill up our stores, our inventory, so we have these necessary things. So on Sunday afternoon, if we get a relay out, we can call our guys in on overtime, they can get that part and they can fix that part, rather than have that go over a weekend or over holiday.
Office supplies would double in office supplies.
So the office supplies is kind of a offshoot of our new computer system. So we have this Viewpoint system, and this Viewpoint system is something that will allow us to do a kiosk outside of or in City Hall somewhere. So what I've allotted is for 2 computers that will be set up on a desk that would be built by the guys at City Services outside my office, and they will, so the idea is to get contractors initially to come in and go to the kiosk and go online at the kiosk and enter their permit, and enter and pay by PayPal. We've got PayPal set up. So we're about a month away from going live on our online. We're already going live permits now. We're issuing permits now. We've simplified things. The collector's office is printing the permits, and people don't have to come back upstairs to get the permits. So we're trying to make life simpler for people. And so what happens is I need about $6,000 here in order to build a kiosk and provide the computers that will be used on it, so we can get these people trained, and we won't have a line at City Hall, and there'll be more parking outside.
Thank you.
Just perfect. And I have just one
Sure.
last question, but it's on page 44, so if we want to.
Yes, that's no problem. Page 44.
Vehicles, Jim.
Sure.
And I'll be very honest, we had a great discussion yesterday, you and I, on a lot of the vision that you see for your department, so, but I do want to just explain it to people at home that see from 0 last year to 188,000 this year. But I sort of know the answer because of our meeting yesterday.
So to explain it to others, we need to have, so if we're gonna have a man in a ward, we can't have 2 men in that car, all right? So we have to provide a vehicle for each ward. Now, we have 2 vehicles that we need to put in storage. They're just old. They need to be, they've reached their residual value, I guess. A 1997 Ford that's 20 years old, the Expedition that runs out of batteries and the lights turn on by itself, and it's just a matter of days before that car is not going to make it any longer. That's being used right now by Weights and Measures. And a 2007 Ford Taurus that's on its 3rd department, I think, and at this point it's got over 200,000 miles on it. So we'd like to retire that one as well. So what I'm looking at for vehicles here is 5 Escapes. These are 4-wheel drive vehicles. These 4-wheel drive vehicles provide us with the ability to go out in the snow. And when we go out in the snow, we're encouraging people not to throw snow in the street. We're encouraging plow drivers not to plow that driveway into the street. So that's why we need 4-wheel drive vehicles. Those vehicles, maybe about $30,000 a piece, maybe a little bit less when you buy these many. And then we're asking for 1 van. Now, the van is for the electrician. So my department takes care of the wiring in the city, not only the wire inspecting, but we're also responsible for the maintenance and the upkeep of all the traffic lights and all the the fire alarms that are underground. So we're having constant problems with fire alarms. They're old. They're 100 years old, these wires underground. And right now, we're working with Chief Butler to eliminate those wires. So we're sending out letters requesting businesses that use these wires underground, they pay a fee to go onto a radio call box in which there'll be, it's on the wall, if there's an alarm trigger, it radios 911. It doesn't go underneath the street and alarm. So if you've seen some of these wires, they're in the water in the sewer underneath, and that's where they go to fix them, and that's where they are. So we have to get out of that situation. So why do I need the van? Because right now, all I have is one vehicle. So I have an electrical inspector who is who's the head of the wire department. Below him, I have 2 electricians, Luigi Schenna and Billy Seawood, and then I have an apprentice. So I have 3 guys. So I got 3 guys sitting in one bench sheet across right now the bucket truck, and we can't effectively two jobs at once at this. So I need a vehicle for another $30,000 that will be a high-body van that will run supplies onto these job sites, whether we're fixing outlets in the offices here or wherever we need to do it, and as well, if we're in a manhole cover underground, taking care of it, or fixing a light that got knocked over. So it's a prudent way to take that another electrician that we have now, licensed guy, and put him someplace else and do 2 things at once.
Jim, I'm sorry.
Sure, sorry.
No problem at all. I apologize for cutting you off, though, my jump was start. Is one van efficient for 3 electricians? Because you're right. If you have a service call here in the building, and you have, like I know currently, the corner of Belmont and Hancock Street, the lights are out. There was an accident there over the weekend, and the lights are flashing, and they're not working.
Right.
You need to have somebody go to Belmont and Hancock Street and fix the traffic light, that situation, and you get a service call over here that there's something went down, or a computer went down, or anything. Is one vehicle sufficient for that function?
Well, with the bucket truck, it gives us the great ability to get in the air to change light bulbs and that kind of thing. And so we're multi-dimensional here with that van. And I think the 2 vehicles service those 3 guys at this point, will service them adequately so they can do what they need to do and manage the work so it's productive and efficient. I also have ideas about, and it's in my budget and some of these numbers, to start replacing some of these lights. We own all the lights on Air Force Road in Lower Broadway. Those lights, for $16,000, we can replace every bulb, and in 1 year, save $8,000 in electricity.
It's a no-brainer.
So these are things that we need to be able to do with those guys. And the bucket will reach those lights. So we need to move along and start saving money with some of this stuff and, putting it in our pockets and not wasting it.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, and that's why I just wanted to make sure that we were giving the electrical department or wire department sufficient amount of equipment, because they do a lot of work with a very small group of men, and they do have to move around the city an awful lot.
I appreciate that.
And that's why it was my only question up there.
Right, and to add, in addition, I'm boasting about them, but they do a great job, and this was something that really was not, when I came here 4 years ago, there's none of this going on. But now we're removing all of the pole boxes that are on the sidewalks. So these aren't necessary anymore. So in conjunction with the chief, you might want one in Glendale Square, we'll keep one in Glendale Square, but he wants these removed. There's nothing but graffiti on these, they get false pulls on these, they're old and archaic, they're hard to replace, and there's probably residual value, and we take them all down and we put them in a garage and they decide to sell them off somehow. There's probably money to be made off of it for the city someday. But for us right now, they get knocked down, and what happens is the wires come up inside those boxes and they jump out and they go to that business, and that business, when it rings an alarm, that business rings an alarm through that wire and it jumps out of that wire and out. We got to get rid of some of these things so that they're archaic, and we need to move to a safer, environment. And wiring is important on that.
Counsel, you all set? McLaughlin? Yeah, Counsel Hanlon?
Thank you. Usually we have a part-time plumbing gas inspector, which makes $31,062. You don't show any hours for him on the breakdown.
He's 17 hours a week. He's in on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
So we don't put anything, we put a 0 down for that?
He's in part-time, he's in out of the part-time salaries, I believe.
He is.
see some departments have .2. I was just wondering, that's all.
Previously on the planning department, the point two was a
14.
breakdown between, I think, the grant and what the city was funding. When you were talking about the business manager for city services, 80% was being funded out of my office, 20% was being funded out of city solicitors.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'm ready to go.
I'm sorry. All done?
All set.
Okay, apologize. Counsel Della Sola.
On the item of signal and shop repair, the signal, is that for the traffic lights? You went from 27,000 to 53,000.
We have 2 poles, city-owned streetlight repairs, Air Force Road and Lower Broadway. 2 poles are out, 1 on each street. Those poles, we got prices of $12,000 each. This is about $24,000 there for those. We can't lift those. We don't have a crane to lift those. So those are gonna have to be sent out to someone who, like Bartlett, there's a company called Bartlett that did the streetlight on the corner of Cottage and, where did it go? Cottage and Clinton, yeah. They did a nice job on that. And so, so these 2 that got knocked down were underfunded insurance. The people didn't have the insurance to do them, you know? They got like $5,000 worth of insurance. These things are like $12,000 to do. Yeah, they get a good buck. That's what these people get when you have to fund it all. Maybe someday we'll have a crane. Maybe someday we'll maintenance all the streetlights in this community and we'll be organized for it. But we can't just do 2 on our own now and risk someone getting hurt with no other equipment.
Does that happen a lot?
I'm
That
gonna.
we have to put the money out for a vehicle that hit one of the streetlights?
No, it really doesn't. And this company, particularly Bartlett, they provide a service that if there's a knockdown, you report it to them. They will go after the insurance payment, and they will. So they get their $12,000 to do these lights from the insurance company. We just barely step back, and they give us all the paperwork, and that's a done deal. So that saves, my electrical inspector can do other things while that's being corrected. But we do find some people who are just underinsured or not licensed, or they hit it and run. Who are they? We don't know. So anytime we can get this, I tell you, we go after every dollar. When National Grid hits something under the street, something we didn't do before, but I'll tell you, National Grid will dig a hole beside one of our poles and whack a wire. We're right down there now, because we didn't used to, we go to 911 every single day and we check what's out. We didn't do that before. So when we see what's out, we see what circuit is out. And why was it out? Oh, National Grid just worked there yesterday. So then my electrical inspector goes up there and investigates it with National Grid, and then we bill National Grid for the money that needs to be repaired. So, this is the kind of stuff that if you have the right people in the right places, and, we're willing to work hard, we'll get this stuff done,
Same thing with Devil working up on Ferry Street. If they hit something, you guys would know right away.
Absolutely, yeah. So we're going in on a daily basis when we didn't do it before. There was a union issue, I believe, but we squared it away that, about 8 months ago with the union, who could go look at things and who couldn't at 911, so.
All right, thank you.
Counsel McLaughlin.
I may be jumping ahead to page 45, so if I am, that's okay.
Yeah, no problem. Unless anybody has any objections, we can go right to page 45. It's all yours, Counsel.
Thank you. Mr. Silver, a couple of questions on this page.
Yeah,
One is you told us that the mayor came up with the idea this year of having a ward code enforcement officer.
Yes, great idea.
I couldn't agree more. But I seen FY16, it was appropriated for each ward to have one. Other than Ward 4, so Council McKenna must be doing a great job because they didn't have a code enforcement officer last year. So he's doing a great job serving the purpose for 2 jobs. How is it a new position if it was appropriated last year?
So I think Lorraine could probably speak to this a little bit better, how the budget got new names in it this year. These code officer Ward 1 through 6 were just recently put in this year.
Also, if I could point you out to Ward 1 as well, there's also a 04FY16 there.
Great job, Fred. I'm Councilor Capone. So, do we have this many code enforcement officers right now on on salary?
We do not. We are one shy of what was appropriated last year. He was promoted up to, I think you might know, HR, so he left my department. That has not been filled. And so backfilling 3 positions, or creating 3 new positions, and backfilling that position would give me the 6 ward code officers that we need to make sure that we've got each ward covered.
Okay. So, okay, that's fine. I'll talk to you about that afterwards, Mr. Silver. My other question is in the clerk salaries, so on the very bottom.
Right.
There's 2 of them on page 45, and I don't know about page 40. 2 of them on page 45. Here we go again. It was appropriated in 2016 for $40,446, excuse me. We are requesting this year $37,376. Why was it appropriated last year higher than this year? And what did we actually pay them, because it doesn't reflect a normal trend, as we've seen numerous times tonight?
So we recently hired mid-year FY16, a clerk that, and we probably funded her at the $37,000 instead of the $40,000 because that was her entry level.
So where did the difference in both positions, because both of them, so if you're saying there was one in that case, the second one is still.
Where is that one?
So at the very bottom, it's,
Oh, okay.
it's 2 clerk positions, both at $40,446 and $40,447. They're both requested this year for $37,376. So if you're correct, which I'm sure you are, that we brought somebody in midterm, and we gave them a lesser salary because they came in midterm, maybe a different state, grade, or whatever the case might be. What happened with the other one, and where is the difference between the $40,446 to the $37,376? So there's again a gap here that we're not. I don't want to say we're missing, but
Right.
we're not.
So I can, not to lead you off the trail here, but we took some of our salary line item and we transferred it to overtime. So that could be where some of that 3,000 is, that you see that, you know,
So
just
there's like
floating out there.
$7,000, $7,000 between the 2 positions. There's, you know.
I'm trying to still find I see the one on the bottom line, and I'm hoping you and I got the same pages. Mine says amended on the bottom, yours
Mr.
does
Demus,
not.
do you see
so
where I'm
things
talking
could have been
about?
changed.
I as well only see the one at the bottom that you're referring to, that other one that you were talking about, I wasn't following you on. Oh,
It's continued on the next page.
you don't have the
correction.
You don't have the amended page, the one that they submitted first thing at the start of the meeting. So if you see it's amended.
Okay.
Kevin will give you his right now.
Okay, no, that's fine, then no.
I was trying to follow, that's what, trying to look, I couldn't see what you were looking at.
Mr. Chairman, I'm all set, thank you, I appreciate their explanation.
All set, thank you, Counsel. Counselor McKinnon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Mr. Sopa. Mr. Sopa, I just want to revert, like, I'm on 45, I'm good with it, but there's a number of, I think it was allotted for salaries was 1.57, and that's 1.507 for salaries total.
Okay.
And it's on 43. But what?
You got the amended page?
No, it's not. Let me give you a true figure. I'm sorry, it's getting late in the night.
All right.
1,562,305.
Yes.
That's the amended figure.
Yes.
What does your overall department bring in for revenue over a year period? If you don't have that,
I appreciate the question because I do have it, and I was
Okay.
looking for the opportunity to kind of bring it up and let you
Sure.
know what goes on in my department for revenue and expenses. So, basically, if you look at, we cost you about $4 million a year. As it states now, it's a little bit more, it's 4.1, okay? But if you look at that, $727,000 of that is streetlights. And so we just pay the bill. You give us the money, we pay the bill, okay? So that's not really us, out there doing it.
Operation.
It's operational. And then the casino is 1.3 is going to be in reverse, so that's $2 million right there out of that $4 million. And then in addition to that, the casino is going to fund that plumbing and electrical position for $130,000. And then for permits, I bring in $750,000 a year in permits, and we find $700,000 in fines. So that's $1.4 million in fines, roughly, right, and in permit fees. So, and then in vacant and foreclosed, we almost bring in $100,000 a year in vacant and foreclosed payments, because we're on it. We create a list. I have a girl who goes to the paper every week. We send letters to the people who are in the paper. We say, and I'll tell you, she does a great job, because if you look at the ordinance, it's 500, 1,000, 1,500, then 3,000. And when we start whacking them for $3,000 a year for these vacant and foreclosed properties, these companies called Altisource, and they do the management of these things. We've got them all on a list. In fact, we've put them on QuickBooks. All you guys must know about QuickBooks. It's a software program used for business. I didn't have anything to do with it up in my office. I didn't have any software. I said, let's go get QuickBooks. We'll put them all on QuickBooks, and we'll bill them. And so we made up all bills to these people, and it's going great. So $100,000. So what does that mean? About $375,000 comes off the tax levy for this $4 million budget. That's less than 10%. Don't say that? I thought that's good.
It's getting towards the end, yeah.
I get that.
I just wanted to thank you for the breakdown, because what that does for us is it gives us a little bit of knowledge of what the department's doing financially, and you're almost like to a point where you're self-serving.
Right.
So, and we're getting results.
Right, and I hope to continue that.
Yeah,
Find better ways to make this community better than it is already, because I gotta tell you, it's exciting to work here at this time in this community.
Well, it must be challenging too on some of the
It's very much, and I'm delighted. I work with some of the best people in this this office and on this council. The mayor, I just have to say, it's great.
Sure. Thank you very much for that.
Council Capone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. I do agree with the code officer per ward. In addition, what it's going to give you is going to give you consistency.
You got it, yeah.
Because every individual is different, every individual is looking for something different,
Yeah.
and it seems like every other week, something different's coming across. So if you have somebody who's addressing an area, everyone's going to know what they need to do. It'll be a little bit more consistent. I think you're right. Yeah, at some point, that consistency swings over into familiarity, and you need to kind of break it up from
Rotate
from
that.
time to time.
Right.
You'd mentioned the peeling paint, and I've been hearing about it from a lot of folks.
Sure.
I'm sure you've been hearing about it from
Right.
a lot of folks. Part of what your office, and I do appreciate this, part of what your office does, both you and Frank Nazzo, is try to educate the individual before they get hit with a fine.
Right.
And with regards to the peeling paint, I know we've had in the past, I think we probably have something now, that could be a pretty significant number for your average individual. Not only gonna just run out and get a paint that come out for
That's right.
$5,000. We've had like the no-interest loans and things of that nature, community development. To the extent that anything like that's available, we're making sure that we let the homeowner know about that as well, I'm sure.
We personally walk them down to the planning office and introduce them to Marzi and Albagonzi, and we get them going with that program, because, that's a path to success.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely important.
Right.
So, thank you very much. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Sopa? Sopa, excused. Any recommendations? Council DeFlorio.
I don't have any recommendations.
You have a comment?
I have, after we're done with this, I will give you my comment.
Okay. Any recommendations for this department? Seeing none, Council DeFlorio, you're first.
What
and
I,
Council
what I'm
Capone.
requesting is that the city solicitor please come to the next budget hearing, because I would like a ruling on the questions I can ask and the questions I can't ask.
You want the city
So I want the
solicitor
city
to
solicitor
appear?
to come up and I want a ruling.
Okay.
I want my question answered.
All right, before the next meeting.
Very good,
Council
thank you.
Capone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also would like the city solicitor before, so I could ask a couple questions about that department. I did watch the meeting, so out of courtesy to my colleagues and to the department members, I will not repeat questions that have been asked before. I do, on a personal point of personal privilege, I do want to say, I understand some of the concerns that were raised here this evening. I do share the concerns. You know, our budget director, our city auditor are very competent, very professional individuals. There weren't typos. I know we're looking for exact figures. Sometimes with budgets, there's a range. There's a little bit of flexibility. It stays in the salary number, but the auditor understands what we're looking for. We do want to have specific salary numbers so we can match that up against what's being appropriated. But that said, I understand that there's a little bit of flex room because people leave during the year and then you have to bring people in, so you have to accommodate for different things. Sometimes there's union positions where there's going to be negotiations and you don't know where it's going to end. But if we could, I just wanted to make sure that we got it out there that we have very competent, very hardworking individuals that are providing this information. I did not want either the individuals present or the people at home to think that we're saying that, you know, this is nonsense, that that hard work didn't go in here. It did. And if we could get the information that we're looking for with the hard, fast numbers on salary so we can flesh that out, we'd appreciate it. I know that they know that. So thank you very much for that opportunity,
Thank you.
Mr.
And
Chairman.
finally, Council McLaughlin.
I'm just going to also, on the amendment of asking city solicitor to appear, I'm going to also ask that we have the mayor appear. I truly appreciate Mr. O'Donnell being here, and I know he answers all of our questions and always gives us great advice, but I'd like to have the mayor here. We're talking about the next year, we're talking about the future, the direction of our city. He should be at the table with us having these discussions, and he probably could share some light on some of the questions that I asked tonight if he was present. And again, it's no reflection on Mr. O'Donnell because he does a great job for us. But to have the mayor here, he's the executive director of the city. I would make a motion that we invite the mayor to the future budget meetings, all of them, and ask that he appear in person so that he can sit at the table with us and go over this. Thank you.
Absolutely. I just want to check with the clerk. Mr. Clerk, by statute, I don't know, maybe something came up tonight. Is it required that he be here, or is it just a courtesy? Okay, it's a courtesy. So we have a request to have the city solicitor and the mayor appear at the next meeting.
Are you saying that
The next
just the mayor is a courtesy, but the city solicitor is a requirement?
Right, exactly. Well, we're just, so, yes, exactly. So we want the city solicitor here to answer, give us a ruling, but also to answer a question that Councilor Capone has, maybe questions. And then also, so that's fine. And then, so we have a motion to ask, we need a second to ask the mayor. Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? So I'm asking the mayor, Mr. Clerk, to appear at the next meeting. Thank you again. I know it's a long time at night and it gets a little testy at sometimes, but appreciate it. Nothing's perfect here, and like I said, we're getting this stuff and we're going through the process, and, you know, sometimes we don't always agree or disagree, but, I mean, like I said, that's what it's all about, government. We agree sometimes, we disagree, but this is why we're here to do the business. And just on a note, I did talk with the clerk. I know on June 2nd, which is a Thursday night, there is awards night up at the high school that night. So I know we all got invitations in the mail probably just recently, it's graduation. So in consulting with the clerk, we're thinking about moving the last budget night to the... Oh, yes, we are. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. The departments will come in on June 2nd. The conclusion of the budget will come on June 6th, which is, we have was it a public hearing? Or 2 public hearings on June 6th that night. I know that's nothing, originally it was gonna be the awards night, but they moved it back to the Thursday before. So, and graduation's on the 8th, so it shouldn't conflict with anything. It's a Monday night, June 6th, and approximately around 7 o'clock, we'll have the conclusion of the budget. And if all those department heads you want back to answer, you know, to whether they have a question or to have recommendations, would come back on June 6th at 7 o'clock.
When did you want us to invite the department heads now?
No, we'll send out a thing, but like, for instance, Councilor Capone has the solicitor. While she's up here, he can certainly ask, you know, the question while she's here. So instead of having her come back, whatever, possibly, that may be it for her. But specifically, on June 2nd, what we'll do is, once we get through all the departments, what we'll do is we'll take who wants to see what department heads come back for June 6th, that Monday night, and we'll have the clerk inform them, that their presence is necessary here at that meeting for whatever. On Tuesday? Okay, City Hall shut down on Friday, so we'll do it on Tuesday. So we'll notify them after next Tuesday, because after next Thursday, we have after next Thursday, by the time we notice, City Hall's gonna be closed the next day. So the clerk's informing me after next Tuesday's budget meeting, any questions that you may have of additional, or if you want anybody else to report back, to please make your recommendations that night, so we can ask them to be here. Because on June 6th, Monday, that'll be the last night, at 7 o'clock. We're gonna be up here, and I thank the clerk for this, because one of the reasons is that the department heads are gonna be here anyways, so it's just, we're trying to make it where it's not much of an inconvenience. Yes, it looks, when the clerk showed me next Thursday also too, I know people would, even myself, are gonna be going up there, but I know, from the departments the clerk showed me, it doesn't look like, I don't believe that it's gonna be that long of a meeting on Thursday night, at least I hope not. But, motion to adjourn? Thank you. Second, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you.